Welcome everyone to this beautiful Friday. It is the last hearing of this committee for the next 2 years. There will be no hearings next year, so. All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Judiciary Committee. After I make this announcement, I'm going to step out and repeat the announcement 3 times down the hallway just so everybody has a clear understanding of how we're going to do our bills today. I won't have to go through the whole thing that I'll tell them out there because it only affects one bill out there. My name is Justin Wayne. I represent Legislative District 13, which is North Omaha and Northeast Douglas County. I will have staff and senators do self-introduction, starting with my right, Senator Eichholt.
Good afternoon. I'm Senator Teresa Eichholt from District 44, which is 8 counties in southwest Nebraska.
Good afternoon, Terrell McKinney, District 11, North Omaha.
Good afternoon, Suzanne Geis, District 25, which is Lincoln and Lancaster County, east side. I'm sorry, I'll be quiet.
Josh Henningsen,
Anthony Lewis, Committee Clerk.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wendy DeBoer. I represent District 10 in Northwest Omaha.
Senator Carol Blood representing District 3, which is Western Bellevue and Eastern Papillion, Nebraska.
Rick Holcroft, District 36, West and South Sarpy County.
Good afternoon, Barry DeKay, District 40, representing Holt, Knox, Cedar, Antelope, northern part of Pierce County, and most of Dixon County.
Thank you. And also assisting us is our committee pages, Laura Burtek from North Fork. Logan Burtek from North Fork or Lincoln? Oh, see, I was right. Who is a political science and criminology major in UNL, and Isabel Cold, who is from Omaha, is a political science and pre-law major at UNL. This afternoon, we will be hearing 5 bills, and they'll be taken up in the order listed outside. We have blue testifier sheets. Where? They're outside? Does everybody here who's going to testify have a blue testifier sheet? All right, good to go. We will be using the 3-minute light system. Green means talk, keep talking, have a great talk, and then when it turns yellow, it will be 1 minute warning, and at red, we will cut you off. If there's any, then you'll have questions from the senators. How this will work today is we'll have the introducer open, then we'll have proponents of the bill, then by opponents, and then we will go to neutral, and then that senator is allowed to close. And with that, we will open our first hearing on LB 720. Senator Dover.
Senator Dover, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Wayne, and good afternoon, committee members. My name is Robert Dover, R-O-B-E-R-T-D-O-V-E-R, and I represent Legislative District 19, which consists of Madison County and part of Pierce County. I've introduced LB 720 and AM 951 to change the method of releasing a lien on real and personal property created by a support order judgment, where that support order judgment is verifiably current and no arrears are owed. Under the current law found in section 42-371, a support order judgment creates a lien on real or personal property of the judgment creditor. This means that a support order judgment creates an automatic lien on real property located in the same county in which the judgment is entered. Under current law, the lien created by a support order judgment may only be released if the judgment creditor delivers a notarized release, which is then filed in the court case in which the judgment arose. This is true even if the judgment debtor is verifiably current on the support payments. This process usually functions smoothly. However, in some cases, this requirement can create significant logistical challenges and hamper the transfer of real property, such as if a judgment creditor will refuse to release the lien even when support is current. If the judgment creditor refuses to release the lien, this can delay the transfer of real property to a third-party buyer. This can then create a chain reaction in which a third-party buyer is delayed in purchasing the property with the judgment lien. In many cases, a buyer can only purchase their next home when they have sold their current home. When the property cannot be sold due to a judgment creditor refusing to sign the release, the house cannot be closed. This can then create undue hardship on families trying to purchase a home that are not involved in the dispute between the judgment debtor and creditor. LB 720 proposes to solve this problem by clarifying that lien under the support order judgment attaches only when the amount due accrues. It is then automatically released when the amount due is paid. This would clarify that there is no lien attached to the property of the judgment debtor so long as they remain current on their obligation under the support order judgment. Further, the current law as written is widely interpreted to mean that any arrearage owed under the support order judgment relates back to the date of the judgment itself for purposes of determining the time of attachment. LB 720 also aims to eliminate the problem of an after accrued arrearage, which relates back to the date of the judgment, which is prior to the transfer of the real estate. AM 951 before you is an improved version of LB 720 after the Land and Title Association consulted with other stakeholders, including attorneys who practice in family law area. I will conclude by emphasizing that a release would be required if any amount of arrearages were owed at the time of the property transfer. This is to protect judgment creditors from delinquent support payments. LB 720 is intended only to apply to those cases where the judgment debtor has met their obligations under the support order judgment and is current on their obligation. I would be happy to answer any questions of the committee. Sam Cooper, with the Nebraska Land and Title Association, will follow me and can answer any in-depth questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dover. Are there questions from the committee? I don't see any today, Senator Dover. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you going to stay around to close?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll have our first proponent, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Members of the committee, my name is Sam J. Cooper. I'm with the Nebraska Land Title Association. I'm the legislative committee co-chair of that association. The Nebraska Land Title Association is an organization of land title professionals that operates throughout the entire state of Nebraska. When you think of that organization, think mostly title companies. That's mostly who we are, title insurance agents and title insurers, though there are some others in there, attorneys and others. We're here today to voice our support for LB 720. As Senator Wayne, or as Senator Dover mentioned, the current state of the law is that under 42-371, a judgment for a support order relates back to the date of the judgment. Because any accrued arrearages relate back to the date of the judgment at the time of closing on real estate. The practice in the state is that a release is required from the judgment creditor, and that release must be prepared due to the Supreme Court rules on the unauthorized practice of law in the state. That release must be prepared by an attorney. And in order to get that release, title companies, as a general matter, order that release from an out-of-house attorney or out-of-company attorney at extra expense and extra time to the judgment debtor. We aim to essentially, with this bill, just release or eliminate the requirement of that release where it is verifiable that the debtor is current. And we are aiming to do that so that we can pass on title to real estate in those cases where the debtor is current and is attempting to sell their real estate. We aim to do this more easily. I want to reiterate that we do not aim to reduce the security of the judgment creditor, and we intend for this bill to affect those cases where the judgment debtor is verifiably current on their support order payments. The aim there is just to smooth out the process of real estate closings and to eliminate some extra costs and potential delays in the process for the parties involved. And with that, I'd answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Senator Holcroft?
Can you help me out? Thank you, Vice Chair DeBoer.
Yeah.
Can you help me out with what's your vision of the form that this proof of currency will take? I mean, is it a piece of paper that the individual gets from DHHS, or how is that going to work?
The current amendment as proposed, I think, contemplates that we would go online. All title companies in the state, as a matter of practice, use a system called iCharts. where we're able to view the Department of Health and Human Services support order payments in real time. I think the goal or the contemplated method would be to check that at the time of closing and verify that they are in fact current.
And that's what you do now, pretty much? I mean, to identify the not currency of, or how does it come up that this individual is not current on his payments?
So the practice now is that whether or not they are current on payments is immaterial. We have to seek the release in all cases. So in all cases, we must go to the judgment creditor and seek their release of the lien, even in cases where the judgment debtor is verifiably current. So in this instance, we aim to just eliminate that requirement where we don't have to bring the judgment creditor, order typically about $100 prepared release from an attorney, and then bring in the judgment creditor, have them sign that under notary and file it in court. Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Holcroft. Other questions for this testifier? I don't see any. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next proponent. Is there anyone else who would like to testify in favor of this bill? Now we'll move to opponents. Is there anyone who would like to testify against this bill? Next, we'll look for neutral capacity.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair DeBoer, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Tim Haruza, last name spelled H-R-U-Z-A, appearing today on behalf of the Nebraska State Bar Association in a neutral capacity on LB 720. I do want to be clear, the Bar Association took a position in opposition to the bill as drafted. AM 951 that's been filed on the bill cleans up a lot of our major concerns about the effect of the bill. I do also want to be clear, though, with the committee that we still have some reservations and intend to work with the proponents of the bill as we move forward with another amendment that we expect to work on over the remaining months of session or shortly here as well. We've had a number of conversations with the Land Title Association, have had good back and forth. We've got members on both sides of this issue, right? So Mr. Cooper is an attorney, and I've worked with him on this. We have plenty of attorneys that want to help clear this up and make it easier. What I think has drawn the consternation of a broad swath of the practice areas. So you have the family law section that's impacted by this when you deal with the child support decree. You've got the real estate title section of the bar that's kind of dealing with how do we close on these title things. The current state of the law is that a lien against the property exists both for the security against payments arrearages that accrue, right? So if a payor fails to make their child support payment 1 month, they would be in arrears with respect to that payment. The security exists, the lien exists to help secure that payment, but the court precedent that's developed over decades now is pretty clear too that it also serves as security for future payments to ensure that there's something there. We don't require every single obligor, right? So person who's paying child support to post security. But the statutes are very clear, and even if you look at the Green Copy Amendment or this particular section of statute, there are other pieces that do allow judges to issue or to require or to place some sort of collateralization for the future payments of that debt, right? So right now, under the law, if you wanted to go in and sell your home, but you owed child support payment to an ex-spouse, the ex-spouse has the right to go in and ask a judge to order a bond, right? To place security if you've had somebody who's had historic issues with payments. We've had a number of discussions, and I've talked with former judges, with family law attorneys, with title folks. This makes it better, which is why I'm here in a neutral capacity. We want to talk a little bit more about how it affects the collateralization approach and the security for future payments issue, and whether that changes the principle of the law as it currently stands moving forward. We may all get together and have a discussion and say, hey, that's a policy choice the legislature can make. I think there's just some practical discussions about what that will mean for ultimately the children to whom these payments are made, right? For the benefit of the kids that receive the child support payments. So with that, I'm open to any questions. I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Haruza? I don't see any. Thank you for being
Thank
here. Anyone else in a neutral capacity? While Senator Dover is coming up for closing, I will note for the record that there were 2 letters, one in support and one in neutral capacity. Senator Dover, you're welcome to close.
Thank you. What we're just trying to do here is simplify things And obviously, we don't believe that someone who may, in many cases, because of a situation, may have hostile feelings towards someone else. And for that reason, they refuse to sign, which they will be eventually have to go to court to sign anyway. So I don't think they should be able to hold the closing at hostage. And many times it's not just affecting their family, but other families. And sometimes in real estate, we'll even see 3 houses in a row. I appreciate working with the bar on this. I did find out that how often does this happen where they're in a court and they want additional securities or a bond or something, and talk to a retired district judge that said 5 times in 15 years. So hopefully we'll be able to find a resolution for this. But I do think it's a nice cleanup. There's no reason that we need to tie up the courts and things like this just because there's an animosity between a couple of people. So anyway, thank you for your consideration. Hopefully I appreciate if you get it out of committee. And I think it's a nice cleanup. If there's ever questions out of this meeting, I'd be glad to answer it before we're talking. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Dover. Let's see if there are any questions from the committee. I don't see any. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
That will end our hearing on LB 720 and open our hearing on LB 347. Senator John Cavanaugh, welcome to your Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Vice Chair DeBoer. Good afternoon, members of the Judiciary Committee. I am Senator John Cavanaugh, John Cavanaugh, and I represent the 9th Legislative District in Midtown Omaha. And I'm appearing today for the final time this session in front of the Judiciary Committee to introduce LB 347, which would provide additional requirements for the sale of catalytic converters to metal recyclers. This is a bill that was originally introduced last year in this committee by Senator Lathrop and aims to address a problem that is increasingly prevalent in a lot of our districts, and particularly in mine, the theft of catalytic converters. You'll hear from those behind me some more detailed statistics on catalytic converter theft, but this is an issue that is of particular concern to my constituents. LB 347 provides additional requirements for the sale of catalytic converters to make sure that the person selling obtained it from a legitimate legal source. LB 347 requires the VIN number, year, make, and model of the vehicle from which the catalytic converter was obtained, that all purchases made from the same person in a single calendar day shall be treated as a single transaction, and that payment will be made by check through the U.S. mail with U.S. postage paid. Recyclers are required to keep catalytic converters in the condition they receive them for at least 5 business days. Finally, this bill raises the penalty for a violation from a Class 2 to a Class 1 misdemeanor. I know you've had a long day, so I'll keep it short. I'd be happy to take any questions. And I would just say that I have a bill in government, and so I'll stay as long as I can, but I may have to duck out before closing. And I know folks are going to come and have some constructive criticisms. And as this bill moves forward, I'm certainly going to be willing to entertain those.
All right, thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. Are there questions for Senator Cavanaugh? I don't see any at this time. So we'll have our first proponent then.
Good afternoon, Senators of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Darren Cunningham, Darrencunninghamham. I'm a sergeant of the Omaha Police Auto Theft Unit, and I'm testifying on behalf of Chief Ty Schmader and the Omaha Police Department in support of LB 347. The Omaha Police Department has seen a significant increase in the thefts of catalytic converters over the past several years. Between 2016 and 2019, Omaha averaged 55 catalytic converter thefts per year. This increased to 460 catalytic converter thefts in 2020. In 2020 and 2021, an average of 1,466 converters were stolen each year. So from 2016 until 2022, there's been an increase of over 2,500% of this type of crime. There are several reasons that these thefts have been skyrocketing in Nebraska as well as nationwide. They're easy to steal. Suspects are able to roll under a victim's vehicle, make 2 quick cuts of the metal pipes of the catalytic converter, and remove it. This can be done in less than a minute. They are difficult to track once the converter has been removed and the suspect is no longer in proximity to the victim's vehicle. They are extremely valuable. The sale of catalytic converters to a salvage yard can range from $50 to $450. This amount fluctuates based on the market value of the precious metals contained within the converters. They can be easily converted to cash by selling to salvage yards. Until Omaha passed a city ordinance last year, suspects were able to quickly cash checks that were issued to them, and in some instances, salvage yards were paying directly in cash. Catalytic converter thefts are significantly impacting victims. The cost to replace a catalytic converter can range from $1,000 to $2,500 depending on the make and model of the vehicle. The cost can be significantly higher on commercial vehicles, vans, and school buses. Our investigations have shown that catalytic converters are often stolen by suspects who have a drug history. The ability to steal converters in a short period of time, often in broad daylight, and quickly turn those converters into cash facilitates the drug use cycle. We have also seen an increase, or we have also seen violence associated with the stealing of the catalytic converters. We've had thefts interrupted by victims. In some instances, shots fired at the victim, and in one instance, we had an officer exchange gunfire with the suspect. Legislative Bill 347 would assist in decreasing the market for stolen catalytic converters. Our goal as a proponent of this bill is to reduce the market for illegally obtained catalytic converters. We're able to accomplish this goal through the passage of LB 347. It will have a positive impact on victims and businesses that have had to deal with the expensive process of having their catalytic converter replaced. I'd like to thank Senator Cavanaugh for introducing this bill and the committee members for your consideration. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thanks, sir.
Next proponent.
Good afternoon, Chair Wayne and members of the committee. My name is Tim Lynch, Senior Director of Government Affairs at the National Insurance Crime Bureau based in Des Plaines, Illinois. The NICB is a national not-for-profit organization supported by about 1,200 property casualty insurance companies, including many who write business here in Nebraska. We have 2 agents assigned in Nebraska, one in Lincoln, one in Omaha. Working together with our member companies and law enforcement, we help detect, prevent, and deter insurance crimes, including vehicle theft and this issue, catalytic converter theft. We're here in strong support of LB 347, which seeks to combat this issue here in Nebraska. I should say, welcome to the legislative party. You are now the 30th state to have a bill in this regard. In fact, there are 74 different pieces of legislation across the country on this issue right now. So it's obviously an issue of importance everywhere. As my predecessor mentioned, this deals with the precious metals that are involved in this catalytic converter. That's the elements of, the metals of rhodium, platinum, and palladium, which are all used in the construction of the converters. These metals can be recycled into new products. Nationwide, these thefts have gone up by 1,200%. In 2019, there were 3,300 catalytic converter thefts. In 2020, there were 14,000. And in 2021, there were over 52,000. Our investigative work at salvage yard inspections here in Nebraska have experienced the challenge of identification, record checking, and verification of converters found on the premises. If passed, this bill will make these inspections and investigations much more effective. My predecessor mentioned that the challenge with replacing these can cost thousands of dollars, which costs all of your constituents. So with that, I'm not going to repeat anything that's been said prior to this. I want to keep this short, but we strongly support this bill. We thank Senator Cavanaugh for its introduction. I'm pleased to be here. Please answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next proponent. Next proponent.
Good afternoon, Sherman Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Robert M. Bell. Last name is spelled B-E-L-L. I'm the Executive Director and Registered Lobbyist for the Nebraska Insurance Federation. I'm here today in support of LB 347. Thanks to Senator Cavanaugh for its introduction. The Nebraska Insurance Federation is the state trade association of insurance companies. The Federation currently has over 40 member insurance companies. Federation members include companies who write all lines of insurance and who provide over 16,000 jobs to the Nebraska economy and over $14 billion of economic impact to the state on an annual basis. Perhaps most importantly, the Nebraska Insurance Federation member companies provide high-value quality insurance products that protect Nebraskans during difficult times. One of those difficult times is when your catalytic converter is cut off your vehicle. I think you've heard already from Mr. Lynch and individual from the city of Omaha about the problem that is happening right now, not only in Omaha, but also Lancaster County. Just doing some Google searching on this. Also, we've had arrests in Buffalo, Richard, Hall, and Stanton County related to catalytic converter theft. So anything we can do to help tamp down the secondary market related to that and allow legitimate transactions to proceed would be good. So for those reasons, the Insurance Federation would support the passage of LB 347. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Chair Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee, my name is Blair McDonald, BLAIR MACDONALD, and I am here today on behalf of the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, or Auto Innovators, in support of LB 347 that would put in place necessary restrictions on the sale of catalytic converters. From the manufacturers producing most vehicles sold in the U.S. to autonomous vehicle innovators to equipment suppliers, battery producers, and semiconductor makers, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation represents the full auto industry, a sector supporting 10 million American jobs and 5% of the economy. Active in Washington, D.C. and all 50 states, the association is committed to a cleaner, safer, and smarter personal transportation future. The Auto Innovators is very appreciative of Senator John Cavanaugh for introducing this bill. A catalytic converter is a small control device that contains precious metals, as we've heard, and the high value of those metals in the recycling market, combined with the ease with which the devices can be stolen using basic tools, has contributed to a lucrative market for thieves, and the pandemic has only exacerbated that problem, as we've heard with some of the statistics from the city of Omaha. This is a national issue. It's not only affecting Nebraskans and our communities here, but hybrids and plug-in hybrid vehicles are becoming more common on the roads, and they have actually been the most frequent targets for catalytic converter thefts. So to that end, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation believes that proper protections and safeguards that help track sales and identify legitimate sales from illegitimate ones are critical to both deterring and prosecuting catalytic converter thefts. So we appreciate the way in which this legislation has been drafted in the past. We also understand that there's potential for some amendment language from the opposition. We would be happy to work with the opposition on any sort of compromise so that we could see some of these protections put in place for the entire state of Nebraska. In Omaha and Lincoln, there are city ordinances with restrictions on catalytic converter sales as it is, but this is an issue that affects the entire state, as well as the fact that we are right across the way from Iowa, and so catalytic converters can be stolen off of vehicles here and sold there, or vice versa. So any protections put in place through this legislation would be much needed, and we appreciate Senator Cavanaugh for introducing this bill, and again, support the legislation. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next proponent. How many other testifiers are on this bill?
Good afternoon, Chairman Wayne, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Corby Gilbertson, it's spelled Korbygilbertson. I'm appearing today as a registered lobbyist on behalf of the Nebraska New Car and Truck Dealers Association in support of LB 347. I'm not going to go back through all of the discussion about the precious metals and things, but I thought one thing that was interesting to talk about is that the number of thefts has actually been continuing to increase, even though there has been legislation passed and ordinances passed in cities. There was an article released in the middle of this month, on the 14th, actually, that now estimates that nationwide there were over 150,000 catalytic converters stolen in the United States, and that the previously thought number of 52,000 was based on insurance claims. But what they found was many people don't have comprehensive insurance on their vehicles, and so those people didn't ever file a claim. Sometimes the delay in figuring out that the converter had been stolen caused delays in getting them repaired. So this problem is likely bigger than we even expect right now. Another piece of information I thought was interesting. So the top cars in Nebraska that are likely to have them stolen are an F-Series Ford pickup, Chevy Silverado, Chevy Equinox, a Ford Econoline van, a Honda CR-V, Ford Explorers, Honda Accords, Chevy Cruises, Kia Souls, which Kia Soul came from nowhere on the list to the number 9, and Jeep Patriots. So if you know anybody that owns one of those, know that those are the top 10 that they're looking for here. But I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have some.
Thank you. Any questions from the?
I do, just
Senator Geis?
briefly. What makes how do they get on? They get on the list because they're easier
So
to
this is the
access?
top 10, and it can also have to do with the value of the catalytic converter itself.
Okay.
So the value of the converters range from standard cars to hybrid vehicles, and hybrid vehicle converters can go over $1,000 for when you sell them. So that's the difference. And like Blair said, they don't just have to sell them here in Nebraska. They can send them other places wherever they're finding out they make the most money off of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next, proponent. 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 Moving to opponents. Opponents.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Robert Ellis, and I am Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Alter Trading Corporation, who I'm here on behalf of today. I also have with me today a couple of other representatives of Alter, our Vice President from Omaha, who oversees our 8 locations in Omaha, our Director of Quality Assurance from Iowa, Galen Croucher, and also Steve Napoleon, who happens to be the manager of Sadoff Iron and Metal, who's one of our competitors here in town and a very good competitor and a good company. Just a little quick background on Alter. Our company's been around since 1898. We are celebrating our 125th anniversary this year. We have 67 scrap locations in 8 states, along with an office in Singapore. We have 1,500 employees. We are ISO 914,001 certified, and we have 8 facilities in Nebraska, as I said before. We're not your proverbial junkyard down at the end of the street that is buying or wants to buy anything that's stolen. That's absolutely against our policy, and we are here opposing this bill at this point, even though we are also in favor and recognize the catalytic converter thefts. But we are not the bad guys here. We are not the ones stealing it. We are a sophisticated, good company, and our industry was deemed essential during COVID because of the significant impact we play in the manufacturing and infrastructure of the United States. I also have some handouts that one of my cohorts is going to hand out that talks about from our industry, ISRI, that talks about the contributions and the economic impact of recycling industry in Nebraska. This last year alone, we contributed in 2021, the last statistics, we have $128 million in wages, $495 million in overall economic benefits, and $41 million in taxes that our industry contributed to the state of Nebraska. So again, we're not some small guy. And catalytic converter theft is a problem, and we are here to work with Senator Cavanaugh, and we've offered to do that for the last 2 months. As I said, we're operating 67 other locations, and we've worked collaboratively with the municipalities and the states everywhere we operate in order to make a bill that is both fair to the industry as well as workable for the industry, as well as helps the law enforcement authorities. We've been trying to do that here in Nebraska, and nobody has been willing to meet with us at this point. From some of the proponents who were here earlier, we've tried multiple times, and we have, I think, submitted through our lobbyists 4 or 5 tweaks to the bill that would make it consistent with what we see in other states, that would help attack the problem and work collaboration with us, because quite frankly, law enforcement and the people that we want to help, they are not going to be able to do it without our help, because we are the sophisticated guys. We will keep the records that they need if the amendments that we are proposing would be acceptable. The handouts you have outline the 5 of them. The most important one is the business-to-business exemption is the most important.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Senator Hokar.
Thank you, Chairman Wayne. So typically, how do you receive these catalytic converters? Are they suitable to be resold as used parts, or are they just for scrap?
They're for scrap. And so we already do keep sophisticated records. Our company already under law, we get the name, driver's license, a lot of the information that's already in the bill that we're happy to give to law enforcement or anybody who wants to ask to help us. Right now, we can provide a lot of the information. So we buy them across our scales. We get all of the information required by law. We're one of the good guys. Sadoff and Alter are the
So
biggest
what is
threat.
your, I mean, it just appears in this bill that it's a more of a list of things, data that you have to recover. Is that the
That's part of
issue?
it. And so the biggest issue, as I said, is literally every other state and every other municipality that we do business in, other than the ordinance passed in Omaha last year, has a business-to-business exemption. So the people who are going out and cutting them off the parking lots, like was described by the insurance guys and the officer, those aren't the businesses that we deal with. The auto repair shops, the body shops, those kind of people who are businesses who bring in sometimes 30, 50 at a time. And so to go through some of these hoops and burdens to have to go through loses that business. A lot of that business, they just don't want to go through the hassle of a lot of this more information. In a lot of states, in Lincoln, you have to go get a separate permit. And it's easy enough now for people to ship them out of the state. You can just ship them out of the state. It would be far better to include that exemption in some of the other language we've talked about for us, the good company, to be able to collect the records and work with the police.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we would just ask, I guess my last request would be, we'd ask that it be indefinitely postponed so that we can negotiate the proposed amendments with the proposal.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, sir.
Next opponent.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Galen Croucher, Galen Crozier. I work for Alter Metal Recycling, and I come to testify in opposition of LB 347. Unfortunately, we've seen the same things that everybody else has seen. We actually agree on a lot of the things they're talking about. The thefts are horrible, and we'd like to be a partner in fixing this. Unfortunately, in the 8 states that we work in, we've seen a lot of these bills come up, and they don't do anything except push the legitimate business underground. So as long as people can stick these in the mail and send them off to another state and get money into their account, that's not going to stop. Even if you have it statewide in Nebraska, they can send it off to another state that pays through the mail. So what is going to happen, and what we've seen happen in Lincoln with their city ordinance, is we lost our business by about 80 to 90%. And the issue is that legitimate business doesn't want to have to do all the documentation to bring that to us. They're not going to have the VIN numbers, perhaps. They're not going to want to do all that when they can just give it to a guy in a truck that pulls up and pays them cash, and away they go. So unfortunately, the legitimate business is the only business we want, and that's what this actually decimates. It just pushes it to the underground and makes it easier for them to operate. So we do oppose this. The VIN issue is a concern to have for each catalytic converter, because once that's off the car, it's hard to tie that back to it. So I don't know any prosecuting attorney that's really going to stand on that evidence alone. We've offered an amendment that has an affidavit, so that if they come in and sell us an item and the officers can prove that it's stolen, we can show them the affidavit, the video of the person selling it, and them on camera signing that affidavit. So we'd like to give them something they could actually use to prosecute. So, and also the business to business is extremely important. I don't want to rehash any of the other parts, but I'll take questions if you have them.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next opponent. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Vale, Michael Vail. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Alter. I oversee Nebraska as well as a bunch of our other facilities. Just real quick, I'd like to address the committee to understand what it takes to sell a catalytic converter legally today. And it's unfortunate to hear that in Omaha that the thefts has increased after the legislation that was approved, because Omaha has some of the most stringent requirements for those of us that are buying them legally. So just real quick, in order to sell a catalytic converter today, individual has to go to the police station and get a permit. Not a lot of people want to do that, but in order to do it, you got to go to the police, get a permit. You come to us, we have to videotape, take a picture of the transaction with that catalytic converter on the scale. We have to have proof of ID, photo ID, to verify who is selling us the item. We have to take a picture of the vehicle that is bringing the catalytic converter to us. We do not pay cash. We mail a check to the physical address on the ID that they brought. So for those of us that are doing it legally, which is the majority of us, the legislation that's being presented for 347 does nothing but make it more difficult. It's impossible to allocate a VIN number to a catalytic converter once it's removed from the vehicle. That would be something that would be absolutely impossible from the scrap recycling side to be able to verify. Our business, since the legislation was acted in Omaha, has gone down 90%. The reason isn't because we were buying stolen catalytic converters previously. It's because nobody wants to go through the hassle of selling them to us. Go on Facebook Marketplace all day long. You can see people buying converters. You can sell them out of state. We're doing it right. We want to be part of the solution. We've provided some amendments, but I just wanted to paint a picture in context of what it takes. It is not the Wild West for us legally.
Thank you for that. That was helpful information. Can you currently receive catalytic converters by mail to buy?
We do not. What happens is there were places in New Jersey and in Idaho, people would cut a converter off, sell it to a middleman. That middleman would then ship it. They get paid. So if you have, as law enforcement said, if you have a guy that comes out and cuts a catalytic converter off, he may go sell it to a middleman for 30, 40 bucks. That guy then sells it out of state, gets his check, and it's done. What happens by that is you no longer.
You can't receive them that way.
We don't. No, not at all.
Could you?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Impossible.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. That's good
Thank you for
information.
your
I
time.
really appreciate it. Next opponent. Anybody testifying in a neutral capacity? You ready? All right. We have 6 letters for the record, 3 in support, 3 in opposition, and that'll close the hearing on Senator Cavanaugh waives. That'll close the hearing on LB 347, and we'll open the hearing on LB 734. Senator Bostar, welcome to the best committee in the legislature. Let's wait 30 seconds so they can clear out. You guys don't have to shake hands outside. We got room. It's all right. Y'all can greet each other. Yep. Yep. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Wayne, members of the Judiciary Committee. For the record, my name is Elliott Bostar, ELIOT-BOSTAR, representing Legislative District 29. Here today to introduce LB 734, a bill that would provide a criminal penalty for damage to critical infrastructure facilities that result in serious bodily injury or death. Over the last several years, there's been an alarming surge of attacks against energy infrastructure across the country. According to the Department of Energy, 171 man-made electric disturbance incidents occurred in the United States, a 72% increase from 99 incidents in 2021. Recent notable attacks include March 1, 2023, a man was arrested in connection with 2 power transformer explosions in San Jose in December of 2022 and January of 2023. Law enforcement discovered explosive material in the suspect's house. February 3rd, 2023, in Baltimore, Maryland, self-proclaimed racially motivated extremists were arrested on conspiracy to destroy an energy facility after they attacked electrical substations. Perpetrators sought to cause a cascading failure, resulting in catastrophic damage to U.S. critical infrastructure. December 25th, 2022, Tacoma, Washington, 2 men attacked 3 substations and set a 4th on fire.
December 3rd, 2022, Moore County, North Carolina. Unidentified suspects used firearms in a targeted attack to damage equipment at 2 electrical substations. An extremist group claimed the attacks were designed to shut down a drag show. November 2022, in Oregon and Washington, unidentified individuals attacked 6 electrical substations using firearms and arson to cause widespread power outages. A recent study released by George Washington University documented a dramatic increase in the frequency of extremist plots targeting critical infrastructure, including energy systems between 2016 and 2022. The report highlighted that extremist propaganda has homed in on energy facilities as valuable targets, encouraging supporters to conduct attacks on energy supply in hopes that it will trigger confrontation in American society, resulting in civil unrest, confusion, and mass disruption. Attacks on critical infrastructure can lead to life-threatening results. In North Carolina, after an attack on the power system that led to a massive power outage, authorities are investigating the death of a man at his home that was suffering from medical condition. LB 734 provides for a Class 2 felony if the intentional destruction of a critical infrastructure facility causing substantial interruption or impairment of public communication, transportation, supply of water, gas, or power results in the serious bodily injury or death of another person. Nebraska is not the only state that is considering legislation as a response to these kinds of attacks. Legislators in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Arizona have introduced bills that would require 24-hour security at substations or toughen penalties for damaging them. The surge of these extremist-motivated attacks is a threat to Nebraskans. I would encourage you to support LB 734. Thank you for your time and attention. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, will you stay for closing?
Wouldn't miss it.
All right. First proponent. Welcome. I was wondering why you were here today.
Well, I missed you over natural resources. Chair Wayne, members of the Judiciary Committee, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Shelley Sailings Art, Shelley SAHLING-ZART. I am Vice President General Counsel for Lincoln Electric System. And today I am here testifying in support of LB 734 on behalf of Lincoln Electric System, Nebraska Public Power District, Omaha Public Power District, Nebraska Rural Electric Association, League of Nebraska Municipalities, Metropolitan Utilities District, Black Hills Energy, and Northwestern Energy. I dare to say that doesn't happen very often. Senator Bostar outlined what the bill does. I wanted to talk to you a little bit and let you know, first of all, we're well aware of the threats to the grid. We spend all of the infrastructure, but I can speak for the electric utility infrastructure in particular. We spend a lot of resources and staff looking at these threats that are out there and doing what we can to mitigate those threats, eliminate those threats, and most of all, respond to them if they happen. The one difficulty we have is that it's really difficult to identify and apprehend the perpetrators of these attacks. Why is that? Well, there's over 70,000, over 77,000 substations across the nation. We've got well over 1,000 in Nebraska alone. A lot of those are located in rural, kind of remote areas. So they can disable cameras, they can disable alarms, they can do a lot of damage before we ever get on site to find out who it is. So that makes it really hard to find out who they are. Now, to the extent that we can apprehend them, yeah, we would like to see folks punished, and that's what this bill does, particularly if it results in power outages that cause loss of life or serious bodily injury. There's a lot of things that go on, not just within Nebraska, but there's coordinated efforts across the country, and I'm about to run out of time. But my CEO at LES is the co-chair of the Electricity Subsector Coordinating Council, which is led by CEOs, both public and private, and they're working with the White House and the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security and the National Electric Reliability Corporation. And they're looking at these threats all the time and coming up with strategies to try to address them. Both physical security threats and cyber. Let's be clear, both of those are a huge concern. We're seeing an increase in them, as Senator Bostar indicated. That's alarming, and they're occurring for a variety of reasons. They range from just the vandalism
the kids that are shooting the insulators at the top of the pole, like maybe some of you did as kids, to very sophisticated, coordinated attacks. Those are the ones that are of really great concern. And you might see similar types of attacks across the country that seem very similar. So, one is I want to put you all at ease that we're doing a lot to address it, but this bill would help.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yep.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Blair.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Shelley, do you remember my domestic terrorism bill from 4 years ago? Because I think you came to that.
Yes.
What's different from this bill than that bill?
I'd have to go back and look at it, Senator Blood. I don't remember the details.
But
I remember you
same
having the bill.
principle, protecting our infrastructure. And at the time I was told there was no problem. So I think it's interesting all of a sudden there's a problem. What do you think?
And I would tell you 4 years ago, we probably weren't seeing the kind of sophisticated attacks we're starting to see today. That could be something different.
And that people don't understand how fast technology moves, maybe?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next proponent.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm Elizabeth Elliott, ELIZELLIOTT, Director of Lincoln Transportation and Utilities. I'm here to testify in support of LB 734. Water, wastewater, and traffic signal networks are an attractive target for cyber attackers. A cyber attack could threaten the lives and safety of every individual in our communities. We've seen multiple times across the country the malicious actors attacking water systems and altering the treatment or management of our drinking water. Thankfully, the attackers have been caught early, and if it was not immediately detected, it could have had severe impacts on the community's environmental, fire protection, and public health. Researchers across the world have researched and shown how traffic signal control systems are vulnerable to attacks. Simply attacking the traffic signals and changing lights to all green at a busy intersection at 5 p.m. on a Monday could have potential catastrophic results. At Lincoln Transportation and Utilities, we are taking steps to protect our infrastructure. However, it is impossible to prevent all attacks or risks. This bill helps fill the gaps where technology and security measures can't reach and provides an added layer of protection for our community. Therefore, we are asking for your support of LB 734. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next proponent. First opponent, come on up, Spike.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Spike Eichholt, S-P-I-K-E. Last name is spelled E-I-C-K-H-O-L-T. I'm appearing on behalf of the Nebraska Criminal Defense Attorney Association in opposition to the bill. Our association is made up of about 370 attorneys who practice criminal defense, and we try to oppose laws that add what we would consider unnecessary, overlapping criminal sanctions and criminal penalties to our criminal code. To respond to the last testifier, this bill amends the criminal mischief statute, which provides for a punishment if someone damages property of another intentionally or knowingly or recklessly. I don't even think the examples of cyber threat even would be impacted by this bill, so I would just ask the committee to sort of consider that. But in regards to what the introducer explained why he did this bill, the scenario I think he's trying to describe, and I don't think anyone's talked about this even being in a situation in Nebraska, are the situations that were happening around the country where someone would shoot up a power substation or blow it up or something like that and cause disruption. That is criminal mischief under current law, but it's also another number of other violations in Nebraska criminal law that don't necessarily have that title, substation, or anything like that referenced. You know from yesterday's hearing, if you cause an intent, if you commit a wrongful, illegal act, intentionally or otherwise, that results in death, that is manslaughter. We have a number of penalties that are actually pretty onerous for discharge of a firearm or explosive device from or near an occupied vehicle into any structure. Whether you hit anything or cause any damage is a 1C felony, which is a mandatory minimum of 5 to 50 years imprisonment. Discharge of a firearm at any occupied building is a Class 1D felony. Possessing a firearm or an explosive device while committing a felony, including criminal mischief, is a separate felony. Use of a firearm or explosive device to commit any felony, like criminal mischief, is a mandatory minimum felony and is mandatorily consecutive. And depending on the circumstances, any intentional act that would result in serious bodily injury to another person is a Class 2 felony. So there are other crimes that already exist in Nebraska law. This would add what we consider as an unnecessary enhancement to the criminal mischief statute. You don't necessarily need to have an example of a crime in the body of a crime to actually have it criminalized, and we would urge the committee not to advance the bill.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next opponent. Anybody here testifying in a neutral capacity? As Senator Bostar comes up, we have four letters for and support.
Thank you, Sherman Wayne, members of the Judiciary Committee. I thank you for your attention. Just to respond to a couple of things. The criminal mischief statutes are insufficient for dealing with what we're talking about here today, which is terrorism. Senator Blood, you're right. This is terrorism. And some of the other statutes that were highlighted involved intent to kill people. This provision would not require that. It would require intent to disrupt or disable or destroy critical infrastructure services, but not necessarily the intent to kill. However, if it did, it would fall under this proposed statute. So, I personally don't think it's unnecessary. I think that this serves an important purpose, especially in light of what we're seeing happen. And you heard a little bit about that. With that, I won't take any more of your time because I know you've got some bills ahead of you, and I'd be happy to answer any final questions you have.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Decay.
Thank you. When it comes to destroying infrastructure like a shooting or blowing up a substation, you have a approximate cost of one transformer and knows what that would cost in the time. And maybe one of the other testifiers can relay that information coming forward, because the time allotment and the cost is significant, let alone the cost of possible loss of human life. So
Yes, and so I don't have the exact cost of a lot of that infrastructure. I could certainly get it. I will say that for this legislation, unlike some of the other criminal mischief statutes, this isn't a cost-based bill, right? Under this legislation, someone would have had to have suffered serious bodily injury or have died. And so that would be the deciding whether or not it met the threshold outlined under LB 734. But I can get you that information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Seeing none, thank you for being here, and that'll close the
Thank you.
hearing on LB 734.
Can we bring 441?
Yep, 441.
We'll have to make an announcement or two, sir. Like
Yep.
maybe a minute or two.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started.
Well, thank you
I'm
very
your
much.
vice chair.
Much appreciated, thank you. Well, good afternoon, Vice Chair Geist and members of the Judiciary Committee. For the record, my name is Joni Albrecht, Joni, Albrecht, Albrecht, and I represent Legislative District 17 in Northeast Nebraska, which includes Wayne, Thurston, Dakota, and a portion of Dixon counties. LB 441 is a simple bill. It closes a loophole in the Nebraska law. Currently, it is against the law for anyone in Nebraska to present materials to children considered obscene or harmful, except in schools and libraries. In Nebraska's elementary schools through high school and libraries, it currently is lawful to present criminal obscenity to any age school children. It makes no sense that schools and libraries of all places should be given a pass to expose children to material the law already would recognize as criminally obscene to children. In 2021, we created legislation with LB 1040 and 881 to protect children from being groomed by an adult. This bill simply continues to close the loophole to include any adult in a K through 12 or library setting who seeks to groom a child through the use of obscenity. LB 441 says the same obscenity standard applies to everyone in Nebraska, no exceptions. LB 441 does not change a thing about the definition of obscenity as applied under the Nebraska law. Whatever would have been considered obscene or harmful to children previously or not obscene remains the same. The Nebraska statute that describes, without using the word obscene, what sexually explicit materials are harmful to minors and currently cannot be presented to children is Nebraska Statute 28808. I've passed out several of those, so you don't have to even go look it up. It's just right there at your fingertips. And Section 28807, which defines harmful to minors. These Nebraska laws have not changed in 44 years, since 1977. LB 441 simply closes the loophole. No one is allowed to show material to the state the state would define as obscene to minors. Thank you for listening, and I respectfully ask, obviously, next year to advance this to the floor of the legislature. So thank you.
Oh, it's me again. I'm sorry. I'm not used to running this committee. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions on the committee? Yes, Senator Blood.
Thank you, Senator Geist. Senator Albrecht, just a quick question. I'm confused reading this because it already said before you added the word post-secondary, it said recognized educational institutions, correct? Mm-hmm. Well, isn't it a post-secondary school a recognized educational institution?
Which would be anything after high school. So that when you read through the other state statutes, it shows it's K through 12 that we're talking about in this bill.
So you're trying to say, sorry, the door keeps opening and closing, so it's hard to hear you. You're trying to say anything after high school?
No, anything after high school, you're an adult. Anything before high school, before college, you're not. So
I don't
in
think
K
we're
through 12.
communicating here. So the question that I have is that the change in your bill, you add the word post-secondary to a sentence that already says recognized educational institutions. Is not post-secondary education a recognized educational institution?
It certainly could be.
Pardon?
It certainly could be, yes.
So why are we adding the word in when it's already identified?
Because they are adults. They have the right to look at whatever they want to.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. I apologize.
Sorry.
Can you please repeat that?
We've recognized post-secondary because they are of the age to be able to look at whatever they choose to. K through 12, they are not.
So again, my concern, and I'm not sure I'm getting the answer, is you're adding in a word that isn't necessarily needed if it already says recognized educational institution.
Okay, we have those behind me, some that will be able to testify that they've gone before the courts, and having to have this put in here it's serving as what is the loophole to being able to have everybody look at whatever they want, no matter what the age.
They're not recognizing post-secondary education as an educational institution?
I don't know I don't know. I'll let you see if you can do it, and then I will look at these statutes, because the statutes are the ones that actually identify why we have to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Blood. Are there other questions for Senator Albright? I don't see any. Are you going to stay around for closing?
Yes, I will.
All right, thank you very much. Let's have our first proponent, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Senator DeBoer and members of the committee, my name is Matt Heffern. I'm an attorney in Omaha, Nebraska, with the Thomas More Society, and I'm testifying on behalf of LB 441. My name is spelled Heffron, first name Matthew, Matthew. Senator Albright, and I couldn't hear real well what the questions were here, but Senator Albright was addressing the fact that this is a very simple bill, I believe, and that it is simply closes a loophole, and that is the exceptions listed in 28.815. One of the handouts I give you explains the law, and it's not simple. The interplay of the various laws is not simple, but the reason for this particular amendment to it is very simple, and that is simply when this law was created back in the 1970s, there was an exception made for, and it was intended in the legislative history, it showed that it was intended for graduate schools and colleges not to be subject to the exception. And that's what 815 is, an exception. You can't get prosecuted if you are. And it lists the words educational institution. It should have said, and it should have said that only those that are post-secondary, after high school, are accepted from this. And how do we know that it is a loophole? If you look at the legislative history, and one of the handouts I gave you is that legislative history. It says, a number of senators actually said, this is to protect children from obscenity. And in fact, in the first time we testified on this bill, one of those senators actually came, and that was Senator Pat Venditti, who was the teacher himself. And in fact, he was somebody who taught me. That's how long ago it was. And he said, no, this was not, it specifically was not to allow obscenity into the high schools. And that's all we're trying to correct here. Now, I'm going to jump to the other memo that I gave you, and that is the one on obscenity. And it's not, this bill doesn't address obscenity. Obscenity has been in the law for, since the 1970s. And the obscenity standard that you see there, it was first addressed by the Supreme Court in Miller v. California. It's the one that lawyers are familiar with, and that is the one that says, based on contemporary community standards, something that is patently offensive and appeals to prurient, that is debased sexual desires, and has no, this is important, has no scientific, literary, artistic, or political value. That is what we're keeping from children. And it's a serious matter. Anyone that comes up after this and says, what about nudity? What about that? This is what I'd like you to ask them. This is the question I'd like to ask. Why is it that you, whether it be in a library or a school, think that you need to provide to children?
I'm sorry, your red light is on and today because of the.
Sure, I know you're busy. Can I just finish the sentence?
Please.
Yeah. Why is it that you want to provide to children something that has no literary, artistic, political, scientific value, appealed primarily to prurient interests only? And is patently offensive? Why do you think you need to do that? And then I will point out one last thing, and that is 28.816, 820, that if a teacher thinks they need to present this, they can actually go to the court. It's an ingenious provision of our law. They can go to the court and ask for a declaratory.
Let's see if there's any questions. Just 1 second. Are there any questions for this testifier? I don't see any. Thank you. We'll have our next proponent. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Senators. My name is Sue Greenwald, SUEGREENWALD. In the 1960s, when this exemption loophole was written into the obscenity laws, it was meant to apply to college students. No one back then could imagine that it would one day apply to 6-year-olds. I'm a doctor who has treated rape victims, children, a lot of them, the youngest being a 3-month-old infant. This is not a game to me. I hope it's not a game to you. Your actions have real-world consequences for a lot of people. I heard the debate this morning where a senator said they don't want to fight the culture war and kids should be left out of it. And this is a response to those senators. We could not agree with you more. We are here because you did not leave kids out of it. You pushed critical theory, queer theory, trans grooming, and school porn into every school in every corner of this state. And you refused to leave the kids alone. So this culture war was brought by you. You have refused to consider school choice, parental opt-out, transparency, or what many people consider common decency. So this was brought by you. None of us care what you do at Urban Abbey. We do care what you do in the schools that our children are forced to attend. Senator Blood said, why can't you be reasonable right after you all called us haters? We respect your right to raise your children as you see fit outside of the public schools, but that isn't enough. You're determined to raise our kids as you see fit. We have the right to oppose having our kids sexualized by adults who do not share our values. As you listen to some of the passages you will hear, all of these are found in Nebraska schools. Some of them have accelerated reader points or in the curriculum. I want you to imagine that the teenager next door is reading it right before he comes to babysit your young children, or that your daughter's date is reading it right before he picks up your daughter. These are real kids reading these books that lead to real consequences, and everything you hear is from our schools. If you find it uncomfortable, if you're tempted to stop the reader or turn off the live stream, then you're admitting that this is obscene material. If it's not fit for the public, why is it fit for our students? Ask yourself if you would want your own children or grandchildren exposed to highly sexual material in school, and ask yourself, who should be having these types of discussions with your children? If you think it's a teacher or a librarian, ask yourself how many other parents would agree with you. Thank you very much for listening.
Any questions? Senator Blood.
Oh, I'm sorry, did you say my name?
Senator Blood.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I just have a quick question. Knowing that this is already illegal, why do you believe that this one sentence change is going to change anything?
Because the loophole in the law, which was intended to, back in the 1960s, when these laws were written and put into 43 states, the loophole was intended to keep colleges from being prosecuted based on teaching of things like anatomy, physiology, anthropology. That was the argument that was made back then, to have this loophole for education. The loophole for education has been abused and has been applied to kids down as young as kindergarten, even though that was never the intent. And what we're trying to do right now is go back to the original intent of the law, which is to protect children from obscenity. When they wrote these laws, obscenity, they didn't even consider that it would be used for children. It wasn't, they didn't put it in the law specifically for adults because it wasn't considered a possibility.
So ma'am, do you know the words, they're changing the educational institution to post-secondary, and the terminology educational institution starts at early childhood, goes to primary, secondary, further higher education, applies to charter schools, state schools, private schools, alternative schools, online schools. So changing that one word, how does it do all this?
Post-secondary puts it back, the laws back into covering, the exemption back, I should say, into covering post-secondary, post-high school as it was originally intended.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next proponent.
Good afternoon. My name is Angie Eberspacher, Angie Eberspacher, and I'm here today in support of LB 441. The question is, how do these books get into our school libraries? Most of these books have appeared on the New York Times bestseller list or have been recommended by the American Library Association. But let's look at the American Library Association. Do you know who funds the Library Association? The Open Society Foundation, funded by George Soros. I provided you the information in your handout. Further, in April 2022, the ALA elected City University of New York graduate center librarian and self-identified Marxist lesbian, Emily Drabinski, as its president for the 2023-24 term. Celebrating her election, Drabinski tweeted on April 13th, "I just cannot believe that a Marxist lesbian who believes that collective power is possible to build and can be wielded for a better world is the president-elect of the American Library Association. I am so excited for what we will do together. Solidarity," Drabinski wrote the following on her website. "The consequences of decades of unchecked climate change, class war, white supremacy, and imperialism have led us here. If we want a world that includes public goods like the library, we must organize our collective power and wield it. The American Library Association offers us a set of tools that can harness our energies and build those capacities. So a Marxist controls the American Library Association." Let that sink in. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a library book that I found in 16 different libraries across Nebraska. And 5 of these schools use this book as an accelerated reader, meaning they quiz the students for points after they've read it. The book is called Lucky by Alice Sebold. I'm going to read you some passages directly from this book that's available to minors in our schools. "I did. My focus became acute. I stared harder than ever at him. He began to knead his fist against the opening of my vagina, inserted his fingers into it, 3 or 4 at a time. Something tore. I began to bleed there. I was wet now. I'm excited. I made him excited. He was intrigued, and he worked his whole fist up into my vagina and pumped it. It went into my brain. 'Stop staring at me,' he said. 'I'm sorry,' I said. 'You're strong. I tried. I liked this.' He started humping me again wildly. The base of my spine was crushed into the ground. Glass cut my back and behind. He kneeled back. 'Raise your legs,' he said. 'Spread them.' 'Give me a blowjob,' he said. He was standing now. I was on the ground trying to search among the filth of my clothes. He kicked me and I curled into a ball. 'I want a blowjob.' He held his dick in his hand. 'I don't know how,' I said. 'What do you mean you don't know how?' 'I've never done it before,' I said. 'I'm a virgin.' 'Put it in your mouth.' I kneeled before him."
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next, proponent.
Good afternoon, Senators. Patrick Peterson, PAT-RICK, PET-RSON. I'm here today to advocate for removing school libraries and public libraries from the exemption for obscenity. Decades ago, the exemption was fitting since the legislature wanted to protect the use of illustrations in literature for the purpose of explaining biological functions and processes. But this is not the case anymore. Today, we have organizations like the American Library Association openly promoting books to school and public libraries that contain child-on-child sexual abuse, which is almost never described as abuse in the book, only happenings, detailed incest, rape, and erotica that's beyond explicit. A young human mind is ultimately impressionable, and literary porn is an extremely harmful visual. PBS.org cites the book The Bluest Eye as sexually explicit material, lots of graphic descriptions and lots of disturbing language, and an underlying socialist communist agenda. What I'm about to read is from The Bluest Eye, which is in schools all across this state. This is a scene where a father is raping his young daughter. He put his head down and nibbled at the back of her leg. His mouth trembled at the firm sweetness of the flesh. He closed his eyes, letting his fingers dig into her waist. The rigidness of her shocked body, the silence of her stunned throat. A bolt of desire ran down his genitals, giving it length and softening the lips of his anus. Surrounding all of this lust was a border of politeness, He wanted to fuck her tenderly, but the tenderness would not hold. The tightness of her vagina was more than he could bear. His soul seemed to slip down to his guts and fly out into her. And the gigantic thrust he made into her then provoked the only sound she made, a hollow suck of air in the back of her throat. Removing himself from her was so painful to him. You can read the rest of it for yourself if you like. It goes on for a few more paragraphs, just the same. Ask yourselves, is this really what you want made available to your children or grandchildren to read? This is serious. This is reality. This is what's actually happening in libraries. The opposition will say that any possible positive aspects to these books cancels the damaging, depraved parts. But is this what people do with X-rated movies? Do they show explicit scenes just because the character was generous or kind earlier in the movie? No. Such material is kept from the minds and hearts of young people with laws and warnings because we recognize its damaging effects on young minds. The legislature can no longer ignore this issue. Please do what common sense and moral aptitude require and pass LB 441.
Yeah. Senator Decay.
One quick question. How early of an age is this available to kids in grade school, junior high, high school, or what age does this become available to pick up and read?
I'm happy to provide the information in which libraries we found this in throughout the state and at what levels those are to you, Senator. I can give you that information.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions? Sina, thank you for being here. Next proponent.
Good afternoon. My name is Denise Bradshaw, DENISE-BRADSHAW. The document that's being provided to you was found in OPS middle schools, Monroe and Mars. This is a passage from a book. It's called The Court of Silver Flames. He licked her again, lingering at the spot atop the apex of her legs, sucking it into his mouth, teeth nipping, before he withdrew. She arched, unable to stop the moan breaking from her throat. Cassian's tongue ran downward in an unhurried sweep, and he pressed a hand to her abdomen, stilling her, as he slid his tongue straight into her core. It curled into her, driving deeper than she expected, and she couldn't do anything but luxuriate in it. You taste, he growled against her, making his way up again toward the bundle of nerves in short, teasing licks. And flicked again his tongue. Release became a shimmering veil just beyond her grasp, but drifting closer. So wet, he breathed and licked at her entrance, as if determined to consume every drop of her. Are you always this wet? She wouldn't allow him the satisfaction of the truth, but she couldn't think of a lie, not with his tongue pumping in and out of her, coaxing her toward, but still denying her the pressure and relentless pounding she so badly needed. Cassian snickered as if he knew the answer anyway. He licked her, his silken hair brushing over her belly, and looked up to meet her gaze. As their eyes locked, he slid a finger into her. She cried out, and he trailed a hand from her thigh to hold her open again as he licked at that spot while his finger pumped in and out of her in a teasingly slow rhythm. More. She wanted more. She undulated her hips against him, hard enough to drive his finger deeper. Greedy, he murmured into her, and withdrew his finger nearly to its tip, only to add a second finger as he plunged back in. Nesta let go entirely then, let go of sanity and any pride. As he filled her with those two fingers, he sucked and nibbled and released, gathered around her like an iridescent mist. Cassian growled again, and even gave over to whatever need drove him, and the reverberations of the echo sounded into places of her that had never been touched. In and out of his fingers slid, stretching and filling, all while he tasted and savored. I'm at the yellow light, and to answer your question, Senator, this is available to 12-year-olds in 2 OPS schools. This is targeted young adults. Young adults start at the age of 12. And again, this book that you all have this passage from is available in OPS schools, middle schools, Monroe and Mars. I think I'm done. Is there any questions? This is not literature. This is porn. I am here to speak for LB 441.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next proponent.
Hello, my name is Marilyn Asher, Marilyn Asher. There is a definite need to insert the words post-secondary into section 28.815 of the existing law regarding obscenity. It will help protect the innocence of children in our state. There is no place for the content I have seen in K through 12 school libraries or public libraries for that matter. For almost 3 years, I have researched the availability of obscenity and pornography in the public and private school libraries across Nebraska. My focus has been on databases and websites that gives K through 12 students access to still photos and videos that are considered obscene in statutes 28.807 through 28.815 of Nebraska law. I researched over 200 schools from Scottsbluff to Omaha and collected over 1,000 screenshots of pathways to obscene photos and videos, as well as screenshots of the obscenity itself. When I opened the homepage of each school, I went to the library or media center to find research databases. Each school was different, but almost all of them had Nebraska Access, which is provided at taxpayer expense by the Nebraska Library Commission. Nebraska Access opened the door for me to examine databases that were provided by EBSCO, Gale, and ProQuest. This past year, Nebraska Access made efforts to separate the information that adult Nebraskans could obtain from what K through 12 students could access. But in spite of these efforts, it is still possible for children to access obscene materials through Nebraska Access. Unfortunately, all students have access to obscenity in the name of education. It is by using the passwords of the K through 12 school library websites, I have been able to access lewd Pornhub websites that contain magazine articles with live links to what is advertised as live videos and obscene materials through the databases that are provided by Nebraska Access. Equally shocking were the porn videos and still shots that I found with no password in Symbaloo, which is another search engine available to students in Sherman, Indian Hill, and Crestridge Elementary Schools of OPS and Plattsmouth Elementary School. Symbaloo contains a search bar and an icon that says Safe Search Kids. I saw some of the most offensive obscenity I've ever seen while using this website, seeing actors posing as priests and nuns having group sex. As I looked at the zip codes of the 3 OPS schools, I realized that at least 2 of them educate minority or dual language students. When I mentioned this to the Nebraska Library Commission and some IT experts last year, they expressed the possibility that what I found was a result of not having filters on my home laptop. So I went to the Omaha Public Library and I used one of the teen computers to find if the information came up when I typed in the same terms into one of the OPS libraries that contained Symbaloo. It did. Senators, if I can find this material online in the school libraries, think of what a 12-year-old child can find.
Thank you for your
Please.
testimony.
Please vote for 441.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next proponent. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Judiciary Committee. My name is Marnie Hodgen, former candidate for State Board of Education and a concerned parent. Marnie, M-A-R-N-I, Hodgen, H-O-D-G-E-N. Sexually explicit, graphic, and obscene materials are harmful to minors and are equally harmful to adults. Pornography is addictive and often results in lifelong unhealthy views of intimacy and broken marriages. Parents have been bringing sexually explicit books to the attention of local school boards and the Nebraska State Board of Education. One of these books, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, has been found in the following Omaha public high schools: Benson, Bryan, Buena Vista, Burke, Omaha Central, Omaha North and Northwest, and a copy was found at Papillion La Vista South. The following middle schools also have it: Bryan, Morton, Magnet, and Norris. As I read, I want you to be thinking about the 6th graders especially. 11 and 12-year-olds can check this out.
If you're a person with any decency and sense of what is appropriate, what I'm about to read ought to make you cringe. Yeah, Earl, I'm going to eat her pussy. Do you even know how to eat pussy? Not really. Papa Gaines never sat you down, said, son, one day you're going to have to eat a pussy? No, but he did teach me how to eat a butthole. God bless that man. Yup. I would teach you pussy eating technique, but it's a little complicated. Son, I don't have time for that. I got like 20 pussies over here that I need to eat. Is that right? I'm on pussy deadline. You've got 20 vaginas all lined up in a row? What the hell? What the hell? No one's talking about vaginas. Greg, what the hell is wrong with you? Man, that's nasty. I'm talking about pussy. I got a little honey mustard over here, a little Heinz 57, and a whole lot of pussy. Another page. That was the sexiest pillow. I just wanted to make love to it all night until the dark break of dawn. I used to call that pillow the dirtiest names. I used to say, you slutty pillow, you're such a dirty slut. Stop toying with my emotions. Then one day I came home from school and caught that pillow having oral sex with this table from across the street. And on page 206, so you can be heterosexual or homosexual, and I feel like I understand that. You're like a man in a woman's body or some shit, but I've been thinking about it, and how the fuck can somebody call themselves a bisexual? Man, ain't nobody like that fine-ass girl is making me hard right now. Oh, wait, my mistake. That dude over there is the one that's making me hard. That don't make no goddamn sense. They also have other inappropriate phrases. They talk about ponce, which is British slang for child molester. And also in the book, it says, I'm going to make out with my sister, and I love making out with my nasty-ass brother. What an enlightening, uplifting, educational work of literature. It makes complete sense that a book like this should be in a school library. Is this something you would be okay with your children or grandchildren reading? What about your 15-year-old daughter's boyfriend who read this book before coming to pick her up on a date? Words and imagery are powerful, but the wrong kinds of words will devalue, demean, and destroy.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee?
I have one.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. Are there ever any statistics available as to how often these books are A, checked out, or B, actually read in the library?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. I would imagine we would have to work with libraries and find out how many times. You know, I'm sure they have a catalog system, but that's something that I just haven't thought to look into yet.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you.
Welcome.
Senators. My name is Scott Bush. I represent myself and any other concerned parent that has looked at any of these books. The book I looked at was called Jack of Hearts and Other Parts. This book is available in 4 OPS schools.
You can't really, you can read it to us, but
Okay,
you show it
okay.
to us, it's considered a prop, and I don't allow props.
All right, sir. This is available in 4 OPS schools. This is also available in Lincoln Public Libraries and Omaha Public Libraries. There is currently no system for verifying the age of a child that is checking out material at the public libraries. They feel that's not their job. They feel it is the parent's responsibility to know what their child is taking, but the parent is not required to be there when the child checks out the material. So there is no checks and balances. This book could end up in the hands of a child of any age. I'd like to read you a couple excerpts here. I wonder how he does it. Who? Jack. How he gets all that D. A 4G in Hannah Ling's hot tub. It's like his life's a porno. Is it like that for all gay guys? Like when he got fucked by the coach from Highbrook in the locker room during the homecoming game. Home wasn't the only thing that was coming. That is pedophilia. That is grooming children to be desensitized for sexual advances from adults. I have a 16-year-old son that goes to Millard Public Schools. If he brought this book home, I would be appalled. Next one. Oh man, I wish I was a gay boy. I could fuck that ass off of his. We could all go have orgies all the time. Okay, next one. Ben is one of my closest friends and I'm not his type. He likes bears, big hairy guys, usually older. I'm definitely not that particular gay subsect of wildlife. Ben isn't a big slut like me. For one, There aren't many large hairy men willing to have sex with teenage high schoolers. And though I pass for barely legal, Ben's round baby face makes him look like serious jailbait. This is disgusting. This is rated for 14-year-olds and up. This is what people think 14-year-olds should be reading. The only thing that I can say is I'm glad that this book is mainly found in the OPS libraries because we already know half of those kids can't read. So they're probably not checking it out, but maybe the ones that can will, and I want to save those kids. So here's another one. My first time getting it in the butt was kind of weird. I was a freshman and it was winter break, right before everyone left for vacation, a big holiday blowout party. There was a senior from another school and we were drinking and flirting and eventually we took off together. His parents were home and my mom was home, so he got us a hotel room nearby, ordered up champagne to be fancy. Now before this, I'd sucked my share of dicks and gotten plenty of blowjobs, hand jobs.
Thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next proponent. Next proponent.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Nelson, Kathynelson. I am a proponent for LB 441, and I just want to share with you that I'm appealing to you lawmakers today, not through personal feelings, opinions, or ideas, but through the law itself. The first gentleman that spoke already referred to this, the 1973 Miller versus California decision. The Supreme Court established a three-part test for identifying obscenity, defining it as 1, material that appeals to the prurient interest; 2, material that portrays sexual conduct in a patently offensive way; and 3, material that does not have serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. In this sense, obscenity refers to a narrow category of pornography that violates contemporary community standards. This book violates my standards, and I am certainly a member of our Nebraska community. Please listen to a few excerpts of What Girls Are Made Of, and determine for yourselves and those you represent if these sentences violate your community standards. Our children deserve better reading than this. Excuse me, sorry. What Girls Are Made Of is a National Book Award finalist. The publisher wrote it, the publisher described it as for 8th grade through 12th grade. Here are some excerpts. Page 34. Seth thrust forward onto the bed and between my legs and against the thin barrier that separates us. The hard nose of my teddy bear pokes against my back and I twist to reach it and grab it by the arm or leg and toss it to the ground. My thong gets twisted as Seth takes it off and I hear it rip when he grows impatient and yanks it too hard. I shouldn't care, but I do because the thong is brand new and it matches the bra and the lace can't be sewn back together. But I don't say anything, and then Seth rises above me like a wave and smiles. And I smile back and he pushes into me hard and fast, and it hurts and feels good, all mixed together. Page 35. Soft now, his penis shrinks inside me and then slips out. When I get up to go to the bathroom, a runny path of semen like egg whites trails down my leg. I am horrified. It feels like I just peed myself, and I don't know what I expected. I guess I thought it would just sort of absorb inside me. Or really, I guess I never thought about what would happen at all. The other times when we didn't use a condom, Seth would pull out and come on my stomach, or those 2 times on my back. And then he'd use his t-shirt or sock to wipe me off. But this time, as I walked to the bathroom connected to my room, the sticky wetness drips down my thigh, a couple of drops. Did I already go red?
Yeah, 307.
Oh, sorry.
No, yeah, so we have the here though. Any questions from the committee?
But this is in the Gretna High School.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proponent.
Hi,
Welcome
guys.
back.
Thank you. Allie French, ALLIE-FRENCH. I'm representing Nebraskans Against Government Overreach. We are absolutely in support of LB 441. Honestly, I've kind of completely lost my train of thought. I am so kind of freaked out and grossed. I'm actually leaving the room as soon as I'm done with this because I can't sit here and listen to this. And the fact that there's not one, but dozens of books in our schools right now today that say things like that is atrocious. And to make any excuse to not push this legislation through under the guise of, well, we don't need to nitpick verbiage is going to be atrocious. This is wrong. These are already in the schools, and we need the change in LB 441 to ensure that there is no longer a loophole, an exemption for these schools and public libraries. Kids have access to them. They don't go and make sure that the kid is of appropriate age. They aren't going to call and check with parents. Kids are quizzed on these books when they check them out, or if it's assigned in class. And they may tout that it's got, a couple of chapters in there that push the point of the lesson, but they have to go through all the rest of it. This is awful, awful, awful. Please pass LB 441. Children should not be subjected to obscenity in the name of our First Amendment rights. Children don't have First Amendment rights in schools. That's why they have supervisors and teachers to guide them. And they should have better common sense than to allow this type of material in front of a student ever. That's all I have.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next proponent.
Good afternoon, Senators. I'm going to read and summarize portions of the book, The Haters. The title is My Own District of Kearney Public Schools and in other schools across the state. 14-year-olds have access to this. I was able to get some sleep after masturbating in the sink again, and she was literally smushing my dick under her thigh. She guided me onto my back and pulled on the bottom of my briefs, and I pushed them over my knees and feet, and I was completely naked and not hard at all. She straddled me and pulled her top off, and her breasts flopped out, and I heard them more than saw them. She reached behind herself and kind of carefully took my not hard dick into one, and pretty soon I couldn't really think about anything else, and pretty soon after I was hard, and she took her hand away, and I heard her opening some little crinky package, and I felt her put the cool plastic middle of the condom snug on the front of my dick like she was shrink wrapping it, and I felt her fingernails through the plastic like the legs of a crab fingernailing their way down my dick. And she rose up like a little and adjusted her panties and breathed harder and opened her mouth, and her breath was like vegan fritters and farm animals, and her eyes were dark. And I saw them very clearly somehow, and her hair was stiff with chlorine and itched like straw on my face. The moment she put my knee inside her, I came. I mean, that exact moment. Fuck, I said, and I curled up around her like a snail and kept coming around 100 times. And I said, fuck, 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 until she said, shh, and pushed me back down onto my back and just lay on top of me. That's just a small sampling of the smut being provided and even promoted by the likes of American Library Association and placed in our schools to our students. We need to close the obscenity loophole. Please help save our children.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. My name is Heather Hall, Heather, Hall. I am going to read you excerpts from books at Norris High School. Some of these are actually required reading in 10th grade English. I knew your mother. Did you know that? I knew her real good. I took her from behind the creek over there. The soldiers laughed. One of them made a squealing sound. I told Hassan to keep walking. What a tight little sugary cunt she had, the soldier was saying, shaking his hands with the others grinning. This is about, this next one is about a young boy being gang raped. Hassan lay with his chest pinned to the ground. Kamal and Wally each gripped an arm, twisted and bent at the elbow so that Hassan's hands were pressed to his back. Asef was standing over them, the heel of his snow boots crushing the back of Hassan's neck. Asef knelt behind Hassan, put his hands on Hassan's hips and lifted his bare buttocks. He kept one hand on Hassan's back and undid his own belt buckle with his free hand, unzipped his jeans, dropped his underwear, positioned himself beside Hassan. Hassan didn't struggle, didn't even whimper. Saw the resignation in it. It was a look I had seen before. It was the look of the lamb. This next book, allegedly, Kelly drags new girl off the top bunk and into the hallway while she screams. I watch from the safety of my own bunk. No, please no. Shut up, you little cunt. Get her, Kelly. She drags her down from the hall by her hair. The others cheering like it's a football game. Disgusting, puta. You smell like pussy through your holy panties. How is this enriching? This is for an English div class, for an accelerated English class. I do not get that. It's disgusting. That nigga's not your boyfriend, Marisol says. He's just using you for pussy. You not the only bitch he fucking. Oh, I got a man and he fucks me every night. She moans, grinding on her chair before giving Kisha a high five. Fuck you, bitch. I ain't no fag, Marisol snaps. What the fuck you laughing at, psycho? Bitch, you have a man? Don't you see how that bitch could have anything? The Glass Castle, grandmother, the granddaughter walks in on the grandmother molesting her little brother. I went into Grandpa's bedroom and saw Irma kneeling on the floor in front of Brian, grabbing at the crotch of his pants, squeezing and kneading while mumbling to herself and telling Brian to hold still, goddammit. Brian, his cheeks wet with tears, was holding his hands protectively between his legs. Perks of being a wallflower. They start to make out. The stereo's playing and they're just about to do it when Parker realizes he forgot the condoms. They're both naked and putting this on this putting green. They both want each other. There's no condom. So what do you think happened? I don't know. They did it doggy style with one of the sandwich bags. There were other stories and names. Sheila, who allegedly masturbated with a hot dog and had to go to the emergency room. The list went on and on. These are 15 to 16-year-olds reading this for English class, where they do in-class discussion on these books. This is reprehensible. This is disgusting. This is wrong. And if you don't pass this bill, I don't know, there's something seriously wrong. This is disgusting. And
Thank you for your testimony.
Senator, to answer your question, you can look online.
Ma'am, if she can ask you a question, but at the 3-minute mark,
Okay, sorry.
there's a lot of people we gotta get to. In fact, how many people are, there might be a question. Any questions?
I have a question. Thank you.
Sorry.
And
Senator Ibach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this isn't the Education Committee, but does the school board or parents have no input on what children are reading for required reading?
I pulled my son, or I told him he was not able, I told the teacher, I said, he's not reading those books. I think the problem is that parents are not told. I just was aware of these books being in the curriculum. So I was proactive and took action. I told one other parent just because I knew her, but I just don't think parents are aware of this. And I think if they were aware of this, and they don't notify us. So
my question to the school board, is the school board not aware of what required
yes,
readings are?
we brought it to their attention.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Who's all testifying and remaining in this bill? For pro, I know, for pro, well, you might not be going next. I might go to opponents right now. Ma'am, hold on 1 second, because I might go to opponents right now. I'm trying to figure out time-wise what we got here. So who's all left for proponents? Okay, just 5. Who's all here for opponents? Okay, come on, man. We'll stay with proponents, then we'll go with opponents. Thank you.
The reason I jumped ahead was because I think I can answer a lot of these questions for you guys. My name is Brooke Ritter, BROOKERITTER. I am from Kearney, and I have spent
more than 6 hours questioning my school officials, from the head of the high school for the principal, the librarian, the head of librarians, superintendent, and a board member. So what I found out was, when I asked what the rules and regulations were, I was told that there literally were none. That the F-bomb is available to any child at any age. Actually, porn of any kind can be brought in at the discretion of a librarian who has complete carte blanche to take care of their library and curate their collection, as they call it. So there are no rules. It's up to librarians. I was told by one of my librarians that they're at the mercy of third-party reviewers because they have to bring in so many books that they can't vet them all. So they just read third-party reviews. I was told that parents being put on the committee was not going to happen, but per board policy, they ask a child to be on the challenge book committee. So if a person said, don't give that to a child, the first thing that my board decided to do was make a child be part of the book selection process. They will not allow parents. When we did have the book challenge selection policy, they put together a board. They wouldn't tell us who it was. They didn't tell us what they discussed. And then they came back a little bit later and said they were just going to put it right back on the shelf. I asked my superintendent how having a dick in somebody's mouth isn't porn. Stop it. It is. That's disgusting. And you know what I was told? There is nobody who will be prosecuted, so he doesn't want to hear about it. What in the world are we doing? We need to close this loophole. This loophole was put into place so that people could bring in educational obscenity, but this has been bastardized to the effect of now dick getting sucked is a picture in a library book. And my child was 13 when she started high school. And in fact, my librarian from the high school said that the bluest eye was actually inappropriate for younger age groups, but it hasn't happened yet. Nobody's been harmed yet. We're waiting for the harm before we do anything. That is not acceptable. We know it's wrong. She said it was inappropriate for younger age groups, but yet it's in there. Why? Why are we waiting for harm? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next proponent.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Linda Vermooten, Linda Vermooten. In response to that last statement, let me just say that I am definitely testifying as a proponent for this bill because the harm has already been done. These children are exactly that. They're children, they're minors. They're not emotionally and psychologically prepared to hear what we have had to sit through. But frankly, I feel like I need to go home and have a bath. I don't know about you. And this is in elementary schools. This is in middle schools. The damage is done because they don't know what to do with this. I remember one of my parents talking to me recently and saying, my son came home and he was in this dazed state and like he was in a state of shock. And I said, are you okay? And he kind of mumbled something under his breath. And then he said, well, they talked about some of these books at school. And he ran up to his room and he couldn't cope with it. He didn't know what to do with it, let alone being able to talk to his mom. The question I ask is, whose children are they? They're not the children of the state because we don't live in Russia yet. We don't live under communism. They are the children of the parents. And yet the one factor that is being excluded in all of these is the parents. The parents have no say. They can't even go look at the books. They can't even say, I don't want these books. They don't like to send home textbooks with children anymore. So parents don't really know. And when they ask, they get the runaround, as was hinted at as a couple of previous testifiers. So we have to say that, yes, there has to be a distinction between elementary, junior high, and high school, and secondary. Post-secondary high school is anything that's outside of that. And that is where the problem is, because currently now the librarians cannot be prosecuted for handing out such information under the Pornography Act. they have this exemption because it's supposedly educational. But this is not the kind of education. Think back when you were in school. Did any of you have this kind of education? I think your parents would have marched down to the school very fast and said, no, this is not what we want for our children. There's lots of things that we prevent our children from being involved in. They can't smoke, they can't buy cigarettes, they can't drive, they can't vote, they can't buy and consume alcohol legally till age 21. All we're asking is that this be kept out of their reach as best as we can till they are not a child any longer. And that's why that phrase has to be in there. And as I sit and I listen, I kind of see that we are kind of getting pushed through very fast. This is very serious to us. That's why we take time to prepare testimony and drive and come and sit before you, because we want to have voices to be heard for the sake of the children. Otherwise, you're going to keep people like me employed for a lifetime, because we're going to have lots of them before us.
Thank you for
Serious
your
problems.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Senators.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Diane Cahill, Diane Cahill. And I'm here to talk about a book called This Book is Gay. This book is in the library at Westside High School in Omaha. Someone, I'm not familiar with the exact person, but someone did write up a complaint about this book. It went before the review committee twice, and it was determined that this was okay to keep this in the high school. And so I just wanted to read an excerpt from it, from page 173. Doing the sex. Two men can pleasure each other in a variety of fun ways. 1, handies. Perhaps the most important skill you will master as a gay or bi man is this timeless classic, the hand job. The good news is you can practice on yourself. The bad news is each guy has become very used to his own hand getting himself off. Something they don't teach you in school is that in order to be able to come at all, you or your partner may need to finish off with a handy. A lot of people find it hard to come through other types of sex. A good handy is all about wrist action. Rub the head of the cock back and forth with your hand. Try different speeds and pressures until he responds positively. A bad handy is grabbing a penis and shaking it like a ketchup bottle. Finally, my misunderstanding about rubbing two peens together wasn't far off the mark. Rubbing them together in one hand feels awesome. Mega combo handy. 2, blowies. Oral sex is popping another dude's peen in your mouth, or indeed popping yours in his. There is only one hard and fast rule when it comes to blowjobs. Watch the teeth. Lips and tongue, yes. Teeth, no. And this goes on, and I don't need to read anymore because I know that you all are educated. But why you think that this is necessary for children to know this, have this information at their hands, is beyond me. So I hope that you will support LB 441 and we can get this stuff out of the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I was going to say welcome. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Stephanie Johnson, STEPHANIEJOHNSON. And I came to realize about all of this happening a couple years ago. And I just want you guys to know, Carol Blood, while you're Senator Blood, I just want you to know, you guys are our last line of defense on this for our children. Because we do go to the school boards, we do show up, and we've done all we can. But it is really, we're coming to you because we've done all we can at the school board level. And as you've heard, this is happening. I was in education for 17 years, and I got out of it in 2014, and it was just starting then. But what's happened is it's gotten so far down the track that if we don't, it's like a train spiraling down a track. And if someone doesn't come up and say, stop, all we're asking is you to close the loophole to protect children kindergarten through 12th grade from obscene. We're not asking to change the definition of obscenity. That stays the same. Those statutes stay the same. The definition stays the same. It's just to close the loophole and protect our children K through 12 from this. I have friends that teach all over, but I do have still a lot of friends that are in the district, but outside of our district. So you've heard excerpts from like middle school, probably 9 and up, I would imagine. But it's happening with our children, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. What happens is they get these books and they're supposed to have them in their classroom and read them. I have friends outside of this district that will hide those books from her students and even take them home when someone comes into her classroom on summer school to teach, because she doesn't want to be held responsible for what those little eyes and ears are going to see. Parents don't really know what their children are seeing in the school. So that's why we need you just to close the loophole. All we're asking is for obscene materials to be protected from our children. Obscene materials, we're not changing that definition. Just from K through 12, not adults. Adults can do what they want. So that's it. So thank you for your time today. We appreciate you considering this bill, hopefully getting it out of committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Blood.
Thank you, Chair Wayne. I just want to make it really clear. The issue that I'm having with this bill isn't that you are all concerned about it. The issue I'm having is that you take a word that is already comprehensive and you make it less comprehensive by adding in the word that you think is closing the loophole.
Tell me how it makes it less comprehensive.
I explained that, Senator, to the senator, and I would be happy to explain it to you outside of this hearing.
Oh,
But
well-
I just want you to be really clear on that since you called me out.
Well, I wanted you to hear my testimony and you weren't paying attention.
That's actually not true.
Well, it didn't
We
seem
can't
like
bring
that.
our bills up and any comments that's going on unless we have our computers in front of us.
I understand that I'm here to testify and I've been waiting over an hour.
And I heard you
And so
testify.
and if you don't, if
We're
you
not-
can't,
we're not-
and if you
hold on,
can't
we're not gonna
explain
do-
to
hold
us
on.
why that
Ma'am,
word makes
ma'am,
it less
ma'am,
comprehensive.
What we're not gonna do is interrupt both. We're not gonna talk over people because people have to transcribe this and that's gonna be very hard to transcribe that exchange right there. So one at a time,
Well,
because it's gonna be comma, something, comma, dot, dot, dot. It'd be really
I
hard.
would like at some point an explanation as to how it makes it less comprehensive when all we're asking is to change the loophole and to have K through 12 be exempt from obscene materials.
And that's a conversation you guys can have offline. We don't
And I would
answer
be more than
questions.
happy to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Oh, okay, yes.
What I find ironic, and I've already, I'll have conversation with school board members in my district about some of these things. But what I'm struggling with is we came into public hearing, which will be transcribed, and I think most of the people who are testifying know this. And we're on public TV, and people are reading word for word the word that you're trying to ban when kids at home are watching this, and you're doing the same thing that the school districts are doing.
And we
Oh yeah, there are
are,
kids who are 4th grade class, part of civics. They come down here and tour the building, and they look at history. They look at these hearings. So what I see happening, and again, I gotta have a conversation of why some of these are in middle school, but we're doing the same thing.
so you can.
Ma'am, I will ask you to leave. Can you escort her out? No, I need you to escort out. And it's not just, I do it with everybody. And so I want you to respond to that. Like, what's the difference?
I think because we are pleading with you to understand the gravity of the situation of what our children, we are here for 1 hour. You get 1 hour.
We
They
don't do
have
1
this-
hour. We don't do 1 hour. We
Well,
do 1 hour
however
on the
long
big
it
ones.
takes,
Right,
yeah, however long it takes,
I
which
run
you-
my committee that way.
yeah, which-
When everybody gets the opportunity.
There's an end. There is an end to it. We can come up and read a 3-minute excerpt, but would you have known about it if we had not done this? Would you have
Yeah,
known
'cause
about that?
I'm not supposed to answer questions, but I'll entertain this.
sorry.
I'll entertain this because I actually read all these things you hand out. But by saying them word for word, these
So-
are all going to be searchable by a fourth grader when they're looking up books in libraries.
So I guess what I would say to you is then you are acknowledging it's inappropriate.
I may be acknowledging it, but there's a lot of things that, this last time I do this, there's a lot of things that I find inappropriate. There's a lot of things that I wish I could change, but there's also a lot of other nuances that you got to have to any bill that's before a committee. So it isn't, I mean, if I can paint a bill and get everything passed, then I probably wouldn't get stuff vetoed most of the time, or I would. So there's a lot of nuances to this. Like one, there's local school boards, there's state boards. And I understand, I've watched the state boards, I've watched the local school boards. I was on the local school board. But at the same time, I hear local control. So there's a balance, right? And we're trying, I understand Senator Albright has talked about this bill in previous years that we're kind of the backstop to all of that. I get that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is what I watched today was the exact same thing you're saying you don't want the school districts to do.
We're adults in an adult room,
I understand
and
that. But there's
children
nothing,
go unattended to a library.
and there's nothing stopping a fourth grader right now to pull up this transcript and read everything that just was said.
You are correct, and there was nothing from stopping the fourth graders who attended the hearing yesterday morning when they were talking about all these children that are going to commit
Exactly.
suicide before the end of the year.
I agree with you. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying you guys you answered the question. You gave me your thoughts on it, so I appreciate it. But we can have this
honestly-
dialogue. I mean, my door is always open, so we
I
can have that.
appreciate the question.
Well, thank you.
I honestly do, and I just appreciate the time.
Well, you were the first one who didn't use I don't want to say profanity, didn't use those words. So I don't know if it was a conscious decision or not, but
It's
that's
hard
why
for
I asked
me,
you.
and I heard it enough. And
Yeah.
I actually, to be honest, I had an excerpt in my purse. I just wanted to come to speak from my heart of what we did, and all we want is to protect our children from this. That's all we want, and we're coming to you because we tried everything else.
I watch you guys. Here's what I will say for you in particular. I've watched you guys go through each level of government. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Any
time.
other questions? Seeing none. Next proponent. Trust me, I started a school board too, and now I'm in the legislature, still fighting the same thing, so I get it.
Hi there.
Well-
My name is Jeannie Greisen, Jeanne, last name Greisen, and I'm here representing Nebraskans for Founders Values. And we are the protectors of the First and Second Amendment rights in all 93 counties of Nebraska with a special interest in protecting children. And obviously, I've been spending some time today. You see, I have the rules of the Nebraska Legislature. I've been following up on what are the rules. And funny, I'm in the Judiciary Committee. That means everybody in here has put it Judiciary on top of their priority that they wanted to be on this committee. Probably that maybe you got
I'm
here.
gonna give you an extra 10 seconds just to tell you that is not what happened on this committee.
I was told in the rules.
It was not, very little few people's priority. All right, you have an extra
Well, I
15
was told in the
seconds.
rules that you get to decide which committees you would like to be on, so maybe you got the short end of the stick, whatever. Anyway, so I'm here in support of LB 441. I think it's worthwhile to ask the question, who and for what purpose ever wrote the exemption for education into law in the first place? So if we look at the Nebraska Revised Statute 28-813, obscene literature or material prepares, distributes, promotes, penalty. And I'm going to read this law. It shall be unlawful for a person knowingly to print, copy, manufacture, prepare, produce, or reproduce obscene material for the purpose of sale or redistribution, or to publish, circulate, sell, rent, lend, transport in interstate commerce, distribute, or exhibit any obscene material, or have in his or her possession with intent to sell, rent, lend, transport, or distribute any obscene material, or promote any obscene material or performance. So when I read that law, and then I read number 4, any person who violates it shall be guilty of a class 1 misdemeanor. So here's where the common sense comes in. So if I stood outside in the parking lot of a school, a K through 12 school, and decided I wanted to have some of these books that are in the library or the schools, and I distributed those to the children, say, hey, I have some books, I'm gonna give you some books. The police could come and arrest me and give me a class 1 misdemeanor. However, if the child enters that school and the same stuff is distributed to the kid, that's okay. Now, I find there's something very messed up about that, but that is the fact of how this law reads. So somewhere, someone did something very disgusting when they let this happen. That's all I have, because that's the common sense and that's the fact of the matter and how the law reads.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Actually, I really appreciate your testimony because I don't disagree with you. I think, yeah, we'll work with Senator Albrecht and figure something out, but yeah.
Please get this and save our kids from getting this disgusting stuff in front of their eyeballs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next proponent.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you can tell, my nerves are about shot after hearing, a bunch of pornographic material. Actually, I had a speech prepared for today, but I refused to go ahead and contribute to that. The book that I had was going to be Call Me By Your Name. It is kind of a last-minute preparation, as I didn't know I was going to have today off. Most of you guys know me, and I'm not speaking in any sort of official capacity, but I do sit on the Metro Community College Board of Governors. And like I said before, I'm not speaking in an official capacity. But when we talk about students and we talk about their education, and maybe this is more appropriate for the Education Committee, I would fully admit to that. But this is the day I happen to get off, and I typically work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, plus dealing with the college. So anyway, somebody knows that these book titles are in fact coming into our public school libraries. And in fact, they do need to be held accountable for this. In a book summary on this book, says a young man becomes romantically involved with an older house guest. And I'm going to give you some statistics on the book that should floor you. They have profanity listed a total of 60 times in this book, and this book is completely sexually oriented. Now, I can tell you that the information I'm going to tell you is public knowledge. We spend an insurmountable amount of money doing remedial training through the college, okay, with especially students coming from Omaha Public Schools. Now, do we really need to be focused on material like this, or do we need to be focused more on reading, writing, arithmetic, stuff like that? So my testimony in support of 441, again, I had a speech prepared and decided to scrap it this last minute, would be to, let's talk about, what actually needs to be in the schools. Let's talk about, whether or not somebody actually needs to be persecuted or prosecuted for this material that they have allowed in the schools. And how you guys on the Judiciary Committee here can in fact help influence a more positive change in the school system. I yield the rest of my time, I guess. I'll take any questions.
Can you spell your name for the record?
That's Gotschall.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Blair.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, because you do sit on a board.
All right.
I'm just going to throw a couple names at you that come to mind. Do you think we should ban Huckleberry Finn? Huckleberry Finn. Think we should ban that book, Mark Twain?
Remind me of what the context of the book is. It's been a long, long time.
I'm not sure how to explain Huckleberry Finn.
What do you mean?
It is a story about a young boy who escapes an abusive father, and he sets out on an adventure with a man of color. Does that ring a bell?
Okay. So when we talk about various books, I think that it's one of those situations where we should take each book case by case and take it, take that into consideration.
So if the word nigger was in that book a bazillion times, would you think that should be a book that should be
I'm going to be
banned?
honest with you. I've never read it.
But it is usually required reading in schools.
It is? Okay. So I would say, obviously, any book, depending upon the context, should not be read.
But yet we aren't hearing about books like that. That's one of the things that concerns me about things like this, is that we hear about people's perception of obscenity. And I'm not saying that I enjoyed listening to any of that.
Okay.
But it seems like sometimes it's about what we will and won't accept. There are more books on school shelves that are racist than are offensive when it comes to obscenity.
So my position on books is we have a history in the United States, whether we like it or not, in world history, and both good and bad. We should always be able to learn from that history and push forward. I will not say the N-word. It's not something that is in my vocabulary. I understand that it exists. Typically, if I read something that has that word in it, I look around the context to see if there's some reason why it was necessary for that context. Otherwise, I just typically stop reading it.
It's never necessary.
And
What about Judy Blume? Did you ever have any sisters or children that read Judy Blume?
did I ever have any what?
Sisters or women in your family that read Judy Blume?
I'm not sure.
So Judy Blume was encouraged reading for young girls when I was in school.
Okay.
Clearly remember, we must increase our best. The bigger the better, the tighter the sweater, the boys depend on us. I remember almost everything I read, by the way.
Okay.
So I don't remember parents trying to pull those books out of libraries because they felt that the storyline had a purpose. So I guess the question that I'm asking you as a professional
Okay.
is who gets to decide what's offensive and what isn't?
I think,
Because parents certainly have that ability. Parents have, and we already heard one person say that. I told my teacher I didn't want my kid to read that book. And when I was in school, there was a book that was borderline concerning in the 70s. You had to get parental permission to read that book. Johnny Got His Gun was one that I had to get parental permission to read. It was a very disturbing book.
I think that if we draw the line at getting a parental permission, would actually be a good thing. But unfortunately, this just goes unchecked. It just goes unchecked all the time. And I mean, my son checks out books all the time that aren't on his reading level, not necessarily, pornographic. That's not where I'm going with this. But what it is, they weren't on his reading level. And so because he can just walk into the library and check out whatever he wants. Now, the school that my son goes to happens to be conjoined with Omaha Public Library, which I think is a great partnership. It's a cost-saving measure as well as, being able to access more material. But I've seen him come with not grade appropriate books. Like I said, nothing pornographic or anything like that. And so when my student who he's now in 5th grade, this happened, like 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, is able to do that. That concerns me because nobody was even looking at anything that he checked out.
But you saw it as a parent, you're able to say, I don't want you to read that, correct?
As a parent, I am able to say that I don't want to read that, correct. And however, I think we should compartmentalize book titles as according to ratings, right? So, I mean, if that's where we're going with this, then we need to look at like TV ratings. We have TV 14, we have G, we have PG, we have PG 13, we have rated R, we have rated X up to triple X and whatever. So if that's the compromise, then that's the compromise. And I think that, maybe that's the appropriate approach. That's kind of where I stand with that.
Fair enough, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming down your day off.
All right, thank you.
Next pro corner. Welcome back.
AMBERPARKER, Amber Parker. I just have to say that, wow, to hear those things when I tuned in at home, I was like, oh my word. And then I thought I was gonna miss getting to come forward in my concerns. Senator Blood, you bring up a good point. I want to address with you, ask you a question. Do you support Planned Parenthood?
No, we're not.
Yeah, I can't ask questions. We'll just ask on the record. But, Margaret Sanger was a racist. And this is something that is important to address, because what we don't want, I'm not for racism, nor should anyone be for pedophilia grooming. And that's where my testimony is going to tie this all together. There was a teacher, I believe it was New York, and I want to first of all thank Senator Albrecht for bringing this forward. And this was part of a testimony that had been on the record a few years ago when Senator Albrecht had brought this forward, maybe a couple years ago. There was a man connected with a pedophile group, and his job was pushing child pornography policy. And I think some of us have heard the word, is it Valencia, of certain photographs basically encouraging and standing up for child pornography, as news media has shown us this. So I think when we're addressing a topic, it is shameful to take when you support of an organization whose founder was a racist, but then to bring that forward, and it's a distraction away from protecting the innocence of children. You just heard adults that are hurting in what they had heard, and you want to teach this to kids under a guise.
Ma'am, I'm gonna ask you, it's not to do the youth thing, just stay in your testimony. You've been
Yeah,
here now,
yeah,
so
no,
you're-
that's what I'm
Just give me a
I'm just
soft-
talking in general,
Yeah.
because there's a lot going on.
No,
Because
I-
everyone should be voting for LB 574 coming forward, and we can't even do that to protect the children. This is not about adults, this is about children. This is about protecting children. And you have already made clear you don't want to close a loophole. This is not the first time this legislation has came forward. And that's greatly concerning, greatly concerning. We went to the school boards. People did their homework. When is this message going to take place? And I just told you, and I will be glad to dig that up again. This teacher was connected with a pedophile group and is working on child pornography policy. That's what is right now allowed to happen in Nebraska, the way the law is.
Thank you for your testimony. If you can send that to me, I appreciate it. You know, I've
The,
always.
yeah, with the New York
Yeah, yeah.
teacher, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator
No
Wayne.
problem. And just so you know, I think most people are new, actually, most of this committee is new to the judiciary, so we haven't really dealt with this issue yet, so that's why we're
But-
trying to get, I
Yeah,
understand. So
yeah.
I always appreciate you coming down.
There are some that have been here for a while.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, proponents. Proponents. Any other proponents? All right, moving to opponents. You want to go first so you can? Okay. Thank you for waiting patiently. Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Josephine, legal name Vincent Litwinowitz, JOSEPHINLITWINOWICZ. And what I just heard is garbage. Well, what I just heard was, that's insane. I'm not old enough to read that. And I can't get it. I mean, we are, but I mean, for the purposes of the bill, I mean, it's not, anyway, it's, for the purposes of the bill, post-secondary education, you know, and first of all, you know, would you outlaw Romeo and Juliet in high school before I get to that? You know, when the nun says, you learn to lie on their back with more wit. I mean, that's in Romeo and Juliet. It's like the only line that, and so there's going to be, I don't know, but this garbage. And are you going to outlaw the Canterbury Tales in college? You know, I mean, it could. I think it ought to be rewritten. And I don't know what to say about how you choose, except for the garbage I heard today was unacceptable. But when you get to a college, university, you got to be careful. I mean, you really do, because it's a different story. Then you have to, I don't know what you do there, because because of it can be abused. I'm in favor of, you don't mess with colleges. The faculty, unless you're a bunch of dark-mouthed dummies, you kind of get together, and they police each other, anyway, so, what I wanted to say, so this is important because, well, I gave you, what I was going to say next, is that, I don't want books about transgender people being banned, because then, that would be, I'm mad about the fact that nobody thinks I exist, and that we like porn or recruit kids. But back to the point is that, when that happens, you make future people that discriminate against me for my disability, but I was targeted because of who I look like and who I am by former Speaker of the Legislature, Mike Hilders, and current Attorney General. So that's what we're breeding future possibilities of, because I took that personally. You're not supposed to take it personally, I guess, but I did. And so I'm going to state it for the record as many times as I need to.
Thank you. Thank
get
you.
it going.
Thank you for your testimony.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Are there any questions for the committee?
I don't think so.
I don't see any. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other opposition? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Yale, spelled Charlie Yale. See if I can get my laptop to work. Okay. Good afternoon, senators of the Judiciary Committee and Sherman Wayne, who's not here. But my name is Charlie Yale. I'm a student journalist, thrice published by the New York Times. I'm a congressional debate national qualifier, and I'm a junior in high school, and I'm a concerned constituent who wants the best for my state. I'm here to speak in opposition of LB 441. 441 tries to fight a non-existent problem. If you affirm this legislation, you open my teachers up to prosecution. While this legislation doesn't change the code of what is or isn't obscene, it does create a legal gray area for content that is absolutely necessary to the education and reinforcement of our children. If you force teachers to leave in an already strained teacher market, it's going to make problems so much worse. I'm the first actual student in an Omaha public school that you'll hear from today, so y'all better listen up. Firstly, let's look to Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, which, if we're being quite honest, this bill is a precursor for. The second proposition speaker proves my exact point. They talk about critical queer and transgender theory being obscene and hurting our children, but they have a serious misunderstanding of the legislation in front of them today. Firstly, they have a serious misunderstanding of the legislation at hand, and they can't cite a single case of queer or trans theory hurting children. They want to take away representation for young people for content that, quite honestly, isn't obscene, and banning speech isn't ever the answer. The third speaker on this affirmation said that books like queer theory will be banned under this legislation, but they themselves explained that the American Library Association endorses a lot of these books that they want to ban. So this means that these books don't satisfy the legal definition of obscenity, deeming their point absolutely moot. I don't understand why the affirmation thinks that they're making, what point the affirmation thinks where they're making by reading violent scenes of rape in front of young children in this chamber, which is just what we are trying to avoid. Throughout my 12 years in public high schools, I've never had a teacher push obscene content onto me. This is simply not something that happens, ever. This problem is trumped up to be something about teachers coming for students, but that's not the case. And I actually read quite a few of these books, including The Kite Runner, which is talked about in testimony. The complex literary themes of this book goes far beyond what are showed in some of these speeches, and it's a story of two young Afghan boys. One who was able to immigrate to the United States to escape war, while his servant, his best friend, is stuck back in Afghanistan to face war's horrors. You cite content that doesn't, once again, satisfy the content of obscenity. Let's now look to Florida, where teachers are already feeling under fire for laws passed like this. A Wall Street Journal article said that educators say that they are now uncertain about how to teach or what to teach. Some are cutting material from lessons or altering how they approach certain topics to avoid potentially running afoul of the law. Staff reviewing libraries to remove materials that some parents might find objectionable. This is absolutely horrific. We need our teachers to be able to teach material that applies to all of our students. And if we pass this bill, that is not the way. What I can tell you about passing this legislation is it will cause an exodus of teachers from the state. When teachers don't feel like they have free reign in their classrooms, when they can't establish relationships with their students, and when they cannot have nuanced decisions,
Thank you for your
they leave.
testimony. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Got to follow my lead. Yes. Senator Blood.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Senator. story on Terpster misogyny like a year ago
I did.
for your high school newspaper?
Yes.
Just clarifying who you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I don't see any. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. To all the members of the Judiciary Committee, for the record, my name is Stacy Johnson, spelled Stacyjohnson. I'm a veteran teacher with 19 years of experience. I currently serve as a teacher librarian in the Omaha area. I am here today to oppose LB 441 that would open the door to criminal prosecution of Nebraska school teachers and library professionals. I represent the NSEA in opposing this bill and also include Stand for Schools as an opponent. Section 28813 deals with obscene literature materials, but how do you define what is obscene? Ask any two people in this room or in your committee and you'll get two different answers. The definition of what is obscene is nebulous and ever changing. It is because the definition is in a constant state of flux that K-12 educators and school librarians need protection with defense found in 28815. The current language of the law protects a teacher or librarian who unknowingly uses material from a textbook, website, or video approved for use by their school district. In the past several years, I have witnessed the fallout from the insidious campaign of misinformation being waged against public school educators and librarians. A misinformation campaign that has some community members believing the very worst about the dedicated professionals serving in their public schools and libraries. They have been brought to believe these professionals are not the dedicated and thoughtful caregivers to children in the community, but rather they are characterized as manipulative groomers who are victimizing students by intentionally inserting obscene materials into lesson plans and providing questionable books in school libraries. This rhetoric, which is spread from bad actors at both the national and local level, has led mid-career educators with many valuable years of experience to leave education altogether because the abuse is not worth the lackluster paycheck. LB 441 adds an undue burden on our K-12 educators and school librarians by opening the door to an ambitious prosecutor seeking to make a name for themselves by criminally charging an educator. Our teachers and school librarians do not need the additional threat of criminal prosecution placed upon them, nor will the added possibility of criminal prosecution attract young people to take up the mantle of becoming a professional K-12 educator. There are already checks and balances in place to discipline and decertify teachers and school librarians who intentionally go outside of their school system's curriculum, the library book selection policies, and intentionally purchase or disseminate obscene materials in their respective settings. We ask the committee to oppose this bill and indefinitely postpone it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator DeKay has a question.
Hi. You heard the excerpts from the books. Do you disagree or agree that those books are available in the libraries of public schools right now?
As far as their availability, I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is that, and I think what's important in this case, Senator DeKay, is that when there is objectionable material that a community member finds, a parent finds, there are book challenge committees and there are policies by school boards that allow for the removal of that book.
So if those books are available in Omaha Public Schools, Lincoln Public Schools, or whatever public school system in the state of Nebraska, would you agree that they would probably be banned or taken out of those school libraries or out of the curriculum?
Well, as we know, different communities and different individuals across the state have, we live in a wide state with lots of different cultures and beliefs. I would rely upon the community that is surrounding that school system, who elects their school board members and who oversee policy, to make the appropriate decisions for what they find is okay for their students to be coming into contact with, either through their school library or in their school curriculum.
If those books were available in school, do you find two things? Do you find those excerpts, are they either educational and or obscene in your opinion?
I don't feel comfortable answering that question at this time.
Fair enough.
Anybody? Oh, they're not good.
Senator Flood.
Thank you, Chair Wayne. Just a quick question, and I've said this a couple times and apparently it's not being heard, so I'm gonna say it one more time. I feel like people are testifying today on the statement of intent, because when you look in the bill and you look at the small changes made in the bill that are supposedly closing a loophole, they have taken the word educational institutions, which means early childhood, primary schools, secondary schools, higher education, charter schools, state schools, private schools, alternative schools, et cetera, like every school. And then pigeonholed one area, post-secondary. So that's what I'm asking everybody about, is that why would you take a comprehensive sentence and pigeonhole it with a word that's just this big, not the word, but the demographic, if you're trying to close a loophole? So are you puzzled by the language of the bill? Because I know what the intent of the bill is.
Right. I'm not, I would say for me, and I'm not clear on the intent. For me, when I read it, the intent is to open a doorway to prosecute teachers and school librarians or public librarians because somebody found something objectionable that they have defined obscene, and then they want, again, having an ambitious prosecutor on their side who wants to make a name for themselves. I would like to make it extremely clear that I am not here to defend the use of anything that is deemed obscene in our school systems. Certainly, nobody would be okay with that. No respectful educator that I know and I have worked with in 20 years would be okay with that. I would say that there are plenty of mechanisms in place to dole out punishment, and it feels like we're seeking a way to now not just decertify a teacher, discipline a teacher in their workplace, and I'm using teacher just because that's what I'm familiar with, but we're seeking to then open them up to criminal prosecution. And that, to me, is a very dangerous and a very disheartening step.
So adding the word post-secondary doesn't really change the criminalization or what they're trying to do in the bill. I mean, you take those words out, the bill still says the exact same.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I read 28813 and 28815. I read them in my not law school. I'm a teacher librarian. I've been one for 20 years, proudly. I read it as, and not freeing anybody from, the responsibility that they are, going to be put, and get in trouble for, having intentionally putting obscene materials in front of their students, but it's the unintentional things, and accidents and mistakes, they happen. Should a teacher be disciplined for that? You betcha. Should it go down the steps of the chain and whatever is established in there? You betcha. And whatever outcome that is, that's the right thing. But I don't believe that we need to just be opening the door to criminal prosecution for an unintentional mistake.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there questions from the committee? Senator Eichholt.
I just have one. Thank you, Senator Wayne. So I keep trying to follow Senator Blood's line of thinking because I want to understand the big picture. So as a representative, do you represent NSEA in this capacity, and just the librarians or the NSEA? The body.
The full body.
And so if you represent the librarians and the full body, do they have protocol in place or a list of publications that are and aren't acceptable? How do they update any of that information on an annual basis?
Are you speaking about, I just want to make sure I'm clear, are you speaking about like selection policies for materials that would go into a school library?
Yes. So, so do you take parents and school boards recommendations and add or subtract from the library on an annual basis, on a
So selection policies can vary by district because they're determined by school boards, through local control. And they're approved policies, and how often those policies are revisited, I don't know. In the school districts that I have worked for, we have recognized publications that we look to help guide us in our choices for what we purchase for our schools. Now, I can tell you, quite honestly, have I been led down a fool's path by some of the reviews I have read? You betcha. And if I get something and I see something, and knowing, being somebody who lives in my community and also works in there, knowing my school and my families, I would say that, oh, nope, this one's not for us. This was a bad purchase. Nope, we're not gonna have that one. Because even though I did all of the things that my selection policy has stated that I do, I don't know of any, certainly in major metropolitan school district that does not have a comprehensive selection policy. Those things, like I've said, are determined and board approved. And as we know, school boards change with, every vote, depending on how the wind blows. And as an employee of the school district, I am not a rogue agent. I have to do my job because I'm an employee.
So you have, just one follow-up question, sorry. So you have the authority to override anything that NSEA would, publication that NSEA would or wouldn't approve? You have that authority at the local level?
I'm not sure. Well, NSEA doesn't set policy for selection.
Okay.
Yeah, NSEA,
Okay.
and neither does the school
Thank you.
library and the Nebraska school, and I can't speak for them. I'm only here for NSEA, but NSEA does not have selection policies in place that go by that. Those things are determined by local school boards, and as an employee, I am duty bound to follow those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next opponent. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wayne, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Noemi Gilbert, Noemigilbert. I'm 17. I'm a senior in high school. I'm about to graduate in about a month. A proud product of Omaha Public Schools. I can read. And I'm here to speak about the potential damage that this bill introduces for students' freedom of access to information and freedom of speech. So it was said earlier that students do not have First Amendment rights in schools. This is actually incorrect. Tinker versus Des Moines did rule that students do not lose their rights to First Amendment speech when they enter school. I feel like we've heard a lot from parents on this issue. I ask you to consider students as well. Students are people with minds and decision-making ability and capacity and the ability to take in and understand complex information about the world. I have read quite a few books that were excerpts of which were read today. And I ask, what can we learn from books that are considered obscene? From books like The Kite Runner, we can learn about how interpersonal violence is amplified by national violence, such as war. From books like This Book is Gay, people can learn about sex and sexuality and identity. And this is all very important. What other kinds of material could LB 441 ban? Would it ban the American Girl classic, The Care and Keeping of You, which has essential information about puberty and development, that if it's available in a library, it can be available for a student who might not be getting that information from any other way. I think it's essential that our young people understand their bodies and understand development. And I really worry that LB 441 would end up restricting sex education and education for young people about puberty and development under the guise of something that is obscene. As we've heard today, obscenity is subjective, and I worry that LB 441 could open the door for information about queer youth to be considered obscene and isolate queer youth from the resources that could be available for them to develop understanding of their identity, of themselves or others. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Next opponent. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jane Sue, Janeseu, and I'm an attorney with the ACLU of Nebraska. Testifying in opposition to LB 441, but I thought I could kind of address a little bit more about what the bill really does, as well as some of the implications. So obviously I'm in opposition, so I feel a little silly explaining how the bill works, but what the bill does is first of all, obscenity is a criminal offense, right? So it's a criminal charge to, like procure, distribute obscene material. This bill removes an affirmative defense for basically grade school teachers. So the insertion of post-secondary basically allows that defense to continue for post-secondary educators and libraries. So it removes the defense though for grade school teachers and teachers and librarians. So really we find that distinction arbitrary. That why was one set of professionals allow this exemption or allow this affirmative defense, but another set of professionals aren't. And then there are obviously huge First Amendment chilling concerns on their free speech and expression by exposing grade school teachers and librarians to criminal liability because of this amendment in our obscenity statute. And really obscenity, the case you heard before that set the obscenity standard, the three-pronged obscenity standard, is from 1973. Obscenity is something that the Supreme Court really dealt with a lot through the 1970s, the 60s, the 70s. It's not really something that we deal with anymore because it is established law. It's a high bar, it's narrow. And really now, by bringing attention and amending our obscenity statute, we're basically just kind of inflaming what we think is obscene and using this term that is established and granted is not protected speech, but now we're blurring the lines about what is really protected, what is not. We're chilling speech, we're exposing liability with criminal sanctions. So I just wanted to clarify those points on the bill. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next opponent.
Hi, hello. My name is Hallie Taylor, Halley Taylor. Do I do address? Nope, no address. I am here in opposition of this bill, and I would also like to begin with a salacious excerpt. And here we go. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene. From ancient blood break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their lives, whose misadventures, piteous overthrows, do with their death break their parents' strife. The misadventure of their star-crossed love and the continuance of their rage, which but their end could not remove, is now the 2 hours of our stage. If you were raised here in Nebraska, it is possible that during your freshman English class, you were required to read Romeo and Juliet, written by William Shakespeare. It is over 400 years old, and in the brief introduction that I shared with you, we talk about genitalia, we talk about sex, we talk about suicide, we talk about family dynamics, we talk about gang violence. All of these themes are over 400 years old, and my understanding as an educator in the state of Nebraska, an English educator in the state of Nebraska, is that this bill would consider William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet obscene. I need this body to continue to trust the professionals, and when we look at this work, to me that includes the Librarians Association of this nation, that includes the public school educators who are serving our youth every day, that includes the literacy coaches, that includes the curriculum advocates. We can go on and on naming the humans we should hear from, but there is a true example of privilege when we are able to sit in this body, leaving work, leaving and traveling to this body to speak. And so I want to acknowledge that my professional development has prepared me to not only choose literature appropriate for the grade level in which I am
hired to teach in our public schools in this state, but that includes every other educator in this state. Whether it's a sex educator, an AP biology teacher, an anatomy instructor, if we are really going to look at this bill and what is or is not considered obscene, which is censorship as well, it is unacceptable that it would be decided by a group of a homogenous group of parents who are able to show up today. And I really encourage listening to the sage advice of professionals like me.
Thank you for your time.
Of course.
Any questions? See none? Thank you for being here. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Wayne and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Jaden Speed, Jaydensped. I am a high school senior. I am 18 years old, and I serve as a student member on my school's Board of Education. I talked to my school's Board of Education and our librarian about this bill before coming today, and I wanted to clarify some of the policies that currently exist at the local level. As some of the teachers have described, there are selection policies on how librarians select which books are included in our public school libraries. There are objection policies. If a parent deems something objectionable, they can object to a committee to the school board. And there are review committees in school boards that decide which books stay on the shelves and which books go. There was also a claim during testimony today that through our public school library databases, through our websites, you could access pornographic content. From my experience, that is completely false. We have content firewalls on all school devices and all school websites. You cannot access the ACLU website from my school computer because it is deemed to be content that is not appropriate for grade school ages. You cannot connect to the Capitol Wi-Fi on my school computer because it is not approved by our firewall. There is not pornographic content on school websites. There's not pornographic content in our school databases. So now I'll read some of my prepared testimony. When I was in middle school around 6th grade, I would spend my lunches, my study halls, my free time in the library. I loved to read and I loved to discuss with the librarians, and they would make recommendations to me on which books I would enjoy. At some point, my taste became more advanced than what we had in our middle school library, so they began to go to the high school library and public libraries around the community to bring books to me. And this helped me flourish intellectually and become the person I am today. So when I read LB 441, and I understand the liability that opens our librarians up to, I was compelled to testify today. When I asked my grandfather what he thought of this bill, he had a comment that I thought was interesting. He said, "What the heck are these people in Lincoln thinking? This is America. We don't ban books here. We don't do that. We don't do that here." I urge you to oppose LB 441, and thank you for your time today.
You ended 40. Usually I have to cut you off with these hearings. Thank you for any questions. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Next opponent.
Hello, committee. My name is Aaron Ross, Aaron Ross. I find this bill troubling, just to be honest. It does not define what obscenity is in this. And I know we have laws that define obscenity, but by not defining it in this bill, we are opening it up to interpretation. We had mentioned Huckleberry Finn earlier. Could the use of the N-word be found obscene? Surely by people in this room, it's obscene. Should it be removed from our school libraries? 100% not. I have 3 children. All of them are in the Miller Public School system. They love to read. My youngest one is just now starting to read. My oldest one is in 5th grade and she's reading at a college level. Some of the books that were mentioned here today are not appropriate content for her age. Is she able to read them and decipher the words? Yes. Would I allow her to read that? No, I'm a parent. I should have the choice to tell my child, ooh, maybe put that one back on the shelf and go back to it in a year or two when you're a little bit older. I see around the country today, the story of Rosa Parks is being censored. They're taking her race identity out of her story and just saying she was asked to move from her seat on the bus and she chose not to, so she was arrested. Well, there's context to that story that's very important. We heard an excerpt earlier about different sexual encounters, specifically oral sex was mentioned in one of those excerpts. The Webster's Dictionary defines oral sex. Do we remove the dictionary from the libraries? Definitely not. But it has content that could be seen as obscene. We need to leave the definition of obscenity and what is required in school up to the educators, up to the librarians. They are not trying to have inappropriate relations with their children, with your children, with anybody that they are educating. They're just trying to do their job and make people enjoy learning. A book that contains sexual content, that content may be necessary for the story. A student that's in high school that is maybe confused on their gender identity, that is confused by something that came up in their sex ed class, may need to go to that book for reference to answer their questions because they don't feel comfortable going to their teachers, their parents, adults in their life and ask those questions. I could go on and on about this forever, but really I brought this book today. It's one that's on my 5-year-old shelf. Pink is for Boys. Pink is for Boys. And this book has been banned.
We got a red light.
In other states. Can I just read the first sentence of this book? It says pink is for boys and or girls and boys.
No, I have to ask you to leave. I don't want to do that. I give everybody a warning that I let them leave. Because you're at
Thank you, Senator
3:15.
Wayne.
Any questions? I'll ask one. Can you give me the name of the book you're about to read?
Yeah, it's Pink is for Boys. And it just starts off with Pink is for Boys and Girls.
I'll see.
That's
I
it.
gave you a second and you try to take more.
I'm sorry.
Pink is for Boys.
Yes.
I will make sure my staff pass out that or excerpt or from that committee for the rest of the committee.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Thank you for being here. I appreciate your testimony. Try to match my color today. Hey, next opponent.
Hi, my name is Grace Jacobson, spelled GraceJacobson, and I'm here in opposition to 441. As all other opponents have brought up, the definition of obscene is being left to subjectivity and not the currently established legal and judicial definitions, which I don't know if there's a difference, but whatever. One thing that really bothers me is this follows in the footsteps of many other bills that end up with entirely harmless and age-appropriate materials being banned just because someone has a problem with, oh, that character has 2 daddies or that character has 2 mommies. Book that I'm going to reference now is And Tango Makes 3. It is based on the real story of 2 male penguins from the New York City Zoo who are a bonded pair. And they can't lay an egg, but they always build a nest every year, and one year an egg gets abandoned. So a zookeeper takes that abandoned egg and gives it to this pair of male penguins, and they hatch it, and the chick is female, and it's named Tango. And that is the whole book. They don't even mention an egg being laid. It has so little remote connotation to even the reproduction of animals. But this book has been banned in a school district in Florida under being obscene material because it has 2 male penguins that are the paternal or the parental figures to this baby chick. I don't think it's fair to have legislation that puts our teachers and librarians at risk. I was always reading above grade level. I read Brave New World in the 6th grade. I read How to Kill a Mockingbird in the 7th grade. I read Fahrenheit 451 in the 8th grade. I read Slaughterhouse 95 My brain is spacing. Also in the 7th grade. So children have varying degrees of maturity and of development, and we should not be saying, oh, we can never, ever, ever have any content that is remotely objectionable ever. And sorry for rambling, but that's my testimony.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this testifier? Thank you for being here. We'll take our next opponent, please. Welcome.
Thrilled to be here. Vice Chair DeBoer, members of the Judiciary Committee, my name is Erin Feichinger, ERINFEICHTINGER, and the Policy Director for the Women's Fund of Omaha. We believe that LB 441 targets learning environments of K through 12 students and is intended to limit access to basic health education materials and information that research shows supports a student's health and well-being. We would offer our firm opposition to this bill. 3 decades of research demonstrates that comprehensive health education, including sex education, leads to increased student efficacy and sympathy, respect for others and bystander interventions, communication, positive self-image, increased recognition of gender equity, increased sense of self-control and safety, decreased intimate partner violence perpetration and victimization. LB 441 would limit access to evidence-based materials essential to comprehensive health education, and under this bill could be labeled obscene. While not explicitly stated, LB 441 will create an environment where typical evidence-based health information would be treated with suspicion when in fact this material and the context in which it is provided is critical to sexual violence prevention. Not every home is a safe place for young people, but every school environment should be. Sexual violence prevention should begin early so children learn body boundaries and healthy relationships. Age-appropriate sexual health programs for 2nd to 4th graders demonstrated significant increases in knowledge of what is an appropriate and inappropriate touch, what to do in an unsafe situation, and increased knowledge and skill to identify those unsafe and inappropriate situations. Limiting access to comprehensive health education as intended by LB 441 will not remediate the problems of sexual abuse. The opposite is true. Behavioral outcomes of comprehensive sex education include increased parent-child communication about child sex abuse, and when implemented with a group of children known to have been abused, resulted in increased disclosure to a trusted adult. LB 441 will not solve the problems facing our youth. It will exacerbate those problems by limiting access to comprehensive health education, and we believe our children deserve better. And to answer an earlier question from you, Senator Wayne, my daughter has watched an inordinate amount of legislative hearings on public access television, but that might just be a hazard of this job. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have to the best of my abilities.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next opponent. Welcome.
I'm Kimberly Metzger, KIMBERLYMETZGER. I am, this is a little insidious piece of legislation that is going to open the door to allow our teachers and our librarians to be criminalized for providing books that anybody seems is going to say is obscene. And with the nationwide push that we are seeing for things like Tango and whatever makes 3, those kind of books that are, by most people's standards, not at all obscene, are being presented as being obscene and can potentially put our teachers and our librarians, of which we already have a hard time getting here in Nebraska, especially in the rural areas. And that is going to cause our teachers, and they're going to have to be very, very careful about what they provide. And these kind of things are not made in a vacuum. You can see across this nation all of these books that are being banned. And this is the first step when you're talking about a fascist takeover of a country. This is the first step, banning books, keeping that information away from children. And I do not want to grow up
I do not want my children to grow up in a state where I have to be afraid as a parent that something that somebody else says is obscene is going to make me or my teacher, my children's teacher or my children's librarian potentially be criminalized because I encouraged my child to read books that are considered obscene by others. That should be on the parent. We're all about parents' choice, right? We're all about protecting our children however is fit for our families. And this legislation clears this for other people to declare obscene things for our children. And that's not America. That's not Nebraska. Let us have freedom to train our children as we would. So please vote no for LB 441.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next opponent.
Hello, Judiciary Committee members. My name is Wyatt Packard, W-Y-A-T-T-P-A-C-K-A-R-D, and I'm here testifying on behalf of the Nebraska Library Association, who urges you to oppose LB 441. If passed, this bill will make it possible under Section 28-813 of Nebraska law to prosecute public and school library workers for lending library materials. Providing age-appropriate content to children and their families is important. That is why library professionals who select materials for libraries generally have a master's degree in library science and follow established policies to thoughtfully review materials before they are added to the library. Obscenity, which LB 441 seeks to address, has a precise legal meaning and is defined in Nebraska Revised Statute 28-807. The reality is that legally obscene content is not provided in public libraries or schools. However, this bill will empower overzealous prosecutors to file charges against public library workers and educators serving the information needs of their communities. And who will shoulder the cost of this litigation? It will be the Nebraska taxpayers, whose money will be wasted as municipalities and school districts are faced with the unwarranted prosecution that LB 441 enables. Did you have a favorite teacher or school librarian as a young person? Now imagine that person is serving 1 year in prison and was forced to pay a fine of $1,000 because they provided you access to books. That is exactly what this bill will allow for. And LB 441 does not only apply to educators or materials for children. The intellectual freedom rights of adults are also jeopardized, as public library workers will self-censor due to the fear of being prosecuted for providing legal materials that some people just don't like. Additionally, the legislature has already identified the shortage of educators as a critical issue for Nebraska, and LB 441 will only worsen this problem. Nebraskans have a right to read, to access media, and to seek out and receive information. It is this right to intellectual freedom that has been central to American democracy and innovation. Public libraries and schools already have local oversight in the form of library and school boards. These governing bodies have established policies and procedures that allow individuals to share their concerns regarding materials. Burdening Nebraska courts with an issue that already has a practical solution is short-sighted and
Nebraska's young people and professionals serving young people deserve better. Thank you. I'll take questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next opponent.
Greetings, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Vicki Wood, VICKIWOOD, and I'm here representing the Academic Freedom Coalition of Nebraska. We stand in opposition to LB 441. If this bill is passed, public and school librarians could be criminally prosecuted for providing legally protected materials to their communities. Librarians are professionals who take their jobs seriously and strive to choose materials that represent the reading and information needs of their entire diverse communities. There are no materials that would meet the legal standard of obscenity in our school or public libraries in our state. And I just want to state this again because the excerpts that were read from the books that we listened to today were maybe 3 paragraphs out of a 350-page book. So there are sexual scenes in the book. That is not the whole book. That was not the intent of the book. And the actual legal definition of pornography and obscenity has a statement in there, the work taken as a whole. So you cannot take parts out of a book and say that that part is obscene, therefore the whole entire work is obscene. So I just want to make that point because nobody has made it yet, I don't think. Public and school libraries are all overseen by local boards. There are processes in place for community members who want to challenge materials. There is no need to waste Nebraska taxpayer dollars prosecuting educators and librarians for imaginary offenses. There is already a critical shortage of qualified educators in our state. Please don't give our young or our experienced librarians and educators another reason to leave the state or to leave their jobs for fear of prosecution. Freedom of information is a bedrock American value, and libraries are an essential part of a functioning democracy. Thank you for standing for our cherished freedoms and supporting our professional educators across the state.
Are there any questions for this testifier? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Next opponent.
Good late afternoon, Senators. I am Rod Wagner, ROD, WAGNER, Director, Nebraska Library Commission. I'm not going to repeat some of the things said earlier, but I do want to, I would like to address a couple of things. I think the best focus for concerns and challenges about materials that are in schools and libraries really rests at the local level. Schools and libraries do have policies and procedures in place for people in those communities, in those school districts, to present concerns and challenges about materials in those schools and libraries. That is where they should be addressed. And I do know, and I've seen policies and procedures that are in place. They are well thought out, and they do follow very thoughtful processes for considering challenges to materials. Let's not elevate this issue to the threat of prosecution of teachers and librarians for claims about obscenity. Anybody can make a claim that an item is obscene. That doesn't meet the legal standard. You know, why go through a criminal process in court action to make that determination when the appropriate place is with the school district, library board, library, and school? Let's place the expectation there that if they don't have those policies and procedures in place, that they do so. We have plenty of examples that we can provide to help them do that. The other thing that I would like to say is that in my many years working with libraries and schools across the state, I have come to appreciate the professionalization, the dedication and service of our educators and librarians. They deserve our respect and our support. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this testifier? Thank you for being here. Next opponent. Is there anyone else who would like to testify in opposition to this bill? Is there anyone who would like to testify in the neutral capacity for this bill? As Senator Albrecht is coming up, I will let you know that there were 527 letters, 235 letters in support of the bill, 292 letters in opposition to the bill. Senator Albrecht, you're welcome to close.
Thank you, Vice Chair DeBoer. And thank you for listening this whole afternoon. You know, when I brought this 2 years ago, we didn't have the parents that have the issues that they do today. And it's just getting greater and greater day by day. And it's the law that you cannot show obscenity. It's in this bill. And that's why I provided those to you so that you understand what obscenity does mean. But more importantly, obscenity is not education. Some people might think it is, but I have 14 grandchildren, and being able to be exposed to some of the things, it was hard for me to sit through this today and listen, and I'm sorry you had to. I had no idea it was going to be so explicit. I thought they were going to bring you books that you can go explore for yourself, and you have plenty of information from all these letters that were sent, pro and con, whether this is a good bill or bad bill. But today is not 1977. That's the last time this bill was opened. And the reason, Senator Blood, you keep asking this question, I'm going to try to answer it. They're giving college students a pass. They're no longer part of the K through 12 education that we want in this bill. They have a pass to not be a part of it. That's what that just taking post-secondary education is just saying that they get a pass. They won't be prosecuted. But when you're in K through 12 and I don't believe any teacher and or librarian is going to put these books intentionally in these schools the way that they are becoming greater and greater. I mean, somebody dropped off 500 books to OPS in the last year and a half. All this has started a lot because of what happened when we were going to bring sex education to the kids. You know, there are just some things that should happen at home, not in school. And I'm just saying that I know this bill's going nowhere. It's second to the last bill. We've all been there. But I promise you, next year, this will be a priority, just like the database bill, that our kids can be exposed to porn within 2 clicks. And they can be at any site and see whatever they want to see. But you know what? We are responsible as legislators to protect the children. And I know there's several people on the floor that think we don't protect the children or don't care to, but we do. And I don't want our children being sexualized at such a young age. We wonder why we have mental health issues in our state today. This is the very reason, because we're allowing things like this to happen. And I'm here to tell you, I have a daughter that has 4 children, and all these grands are under the age of 13. She had to read through a book that this teacher was going to read out loud to the class, 300 pages, but that teacher had no idea what the content of that book was. So as a responsible parent, she went and talked to the teacher, they talked to the librarian, they talked to the principal, and yes, they worked it out. I'm not here to intentionally do anything, but that's what the law says. It's criminal to expose children to pornography. Now, every one of us are going to have a different way of looking at it, but there is an explanation in the terms and definition of what pornography is. So I hope that you'll take time over the weekend to take a look at that. But we are responsible for our children and what gets taught to them and what doesn't. And there are teachers that maybe it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. But I do take offense to the testifier that came for NSEA thinking that I'm trying to make a name for myself. I am trying to protect children. How dare anyone insinuate that any one of us don't have the best interest at heart. So I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, great, but I'm sure this won't see the light of day until next year. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you listening.
Are there any questions for Senator Albright? I don't see any, Senator Albright. Thank you
Have a
for
good
being here.
weekend.
That will end our hearing on LB 441. And I think we'll take a minute to reposition before we begin our hearing on LB 371.